Welcome to Novel Love Hearing. We bring you hundreds of novel audiobooks covering every genre and every kind of story you can imagine. Action? We've got it. Adventure? Absolutely. Horror? Of course. Whether it's the legendary Uchiha massacre or outrageous tales like stealing Naruto's and Sasuke's women, you'll find it here. From epic series like One Piece, Bleach, Fairy Tail, and Hunter x Hunter, to countless other adventures, our library has it all. Love novels but don't have time to read? No worries, just plug in your earbuds, sit back, and let the story take over. Good listening, and happy hearing, but out of caution, my brother took my Zanpakuto with him when he went to confront Koga. Because he was in the meeting hall at the time of the clash, he noticed something unusual in Koga's spiritual pressure. A trace of hollow spiritual pressure. At that point, several of the judges exchanged glances. The judge from the Kuachiki household subtly stiffened. But this was Central 46. Not the personal court of the Kuachiki clan. There were other sages and judges present. And who could say whether or not Yamamoto Genri Uzai Shigekuni already knew? After all, Aizen wasn't just Ain's younger brother. He was also one of Yamamoto Genri Uzai's personal disciples. If this judge dared interfere with Ain's report, the next person stepping into Central 46 might not be Ain at all. It might be Yamamoto himself. This is Central 46, another judge said coldly. It represents the highest law in Soul Society. Lies have no place here. Then please allow me to release my Zanpakuto, Aizen said with calm conviction. In your presence. When the time comes, the truth or falsehood of what I say will be plain for all to see. If there is even a trace of deception, I am willing to accept any punishment. Even execution. There was no arrogance in his voice, but neither was there submission. It was perfectly poised. Very well, one of the sages said after a moment. Just this once, we will allow you to release your Zanpakuto in the hall of Central 46. The others nodded in agreement. None of them questioned the safety of allowing him to use his Zanpakuto before them. After all, they represented Soul Society's noble elite. And more importantly, this was Central 46, not established and protected under the authority of Yamamoto Genri Uzai himself. Anyone daring to act against them would have to face Rijinjaku first. Even his own disciples would not be spared. Forgive me for the intrusion. Aizen unsheathed his blade. Then, he spoke the words of liberation. However, in order to avoid suspicion, he deliberately left the release phrase incomplete. Still, that didn't stop the hypnosis ritual from activating. Shatter. Kyokasuagetsu. As the words left his lips, a smile flickered beneath Ain's glasses. Congratulations to Central 46. They'd just been handed the full illusion package. Kyokasuagetsu paired with the demonic sword Morimasa. Yes. Even though Aizen hadn't spoken the complete incantation, it made no difference. The ritual was successful. The sages, the judges, even the spirits of their own Zanpakuto. All were now caught in the web of complete hypnosis. Because for a Shinigami who had already attained Chi, the requirement for activating their Zanpakuto's ability could be satisfied simply by declaring both the command and Shikai name. In other words, as long as Aizen wished for it, anyone who looked at him, or was seen by him, would fall into complete hypnosis. Shinigami would be deceived. Their Zanpakuto would be deceived. The process was entirely silent. Neither those under the effect, nor the blades they carried, would realize they'd been trapped. In the original timeline, Aizen could have hypnotized Ichigo Kurosaki countless times, but chose not to. Crack. Like shattering glass, water and mist filled the chamber of Central 46. Soon after, the swirling mist condensed, forming a mirror-like surface. A vivid scene played before their eyes. The battle between Ain and Koga. But it was the version Aizen wanted them to see. Through the projected image, they saw Koga's defeat. Followed by his face twisting, a hollow mask forming over it. That damn Kuachiki Jinrai. What the hell was he thinking? He conducted hollowification experiments and didn't report it? Did he really believe he could bury the truth along with Koga's blood burial? The Kuachiki faction's judge remained expressionless, but inwardly he was filled with anxiety and rage. He'd always thought Yamamoto Genri Uzai had ordered Koga's blood burial as a way to quietly extract fragments of the Soul King from his body. But now, with this image, a terrifying possibility emerged. That Yamamoto had known about Koga's hollowification from the beginning, and let him live as evidence to one day implicate the Kuachiki family. Koga must die. Even if it means giving up the Soul King fragment. A flash of killing intent lit up in the eyes of the Kuachiki-aligned judge. Quietly, he gestured. A shadowy member of the stealth corps stationed nearby slipped away. Siriitai's laws may be complex, but even the four great noble clans couldn't escape punishment for certain crimes. And one of those taboos. Was hollowification. But neither the judge nor the retreating stealth corps agent noticed the way Ain's eyes tracked them through the corner of his vision. This is your Zanpakuto's ability, the Kuachiki judge suddenly asked. How do we know this isn't just another illusion crafted by your Kyokusuagetsu? Aizen Sosuke. He was stalling for time. Giving Kuachiki Jinrai a window to silence Koga before the truth could spread. Whether it's real or not, Aizen replied lazily, why don't you send someone to the Repentance Palace and find out? But you'd better move quickly. Otherwise, you may not even find Koga's corpse. He shot a glance at the Kuachiki-aligned judge. Everyone present understood his meaning. If they delayed too long, Koga would be silenced. Do you know why I came today? Aizen asked, sweeping his gaze across the entire chamber. I came to give the mastermind behind the hollowification a chance. A chance to silence his loose end. Aizen and I are both here. The head captain is resting. Whether it's to assassinate or rescue, now is the perfect time. What do you say? His voice was cold. Each word fell like a hammer. Hollowification is a crime. A taboo. Even the 4 great noble clans cannot touch it without facing judgment. I propose that we immediately send someone to the Repentance Palace to verify the truth. The judge from the Tsunayashiro clan was the first to stand up, louder than anyone else. He was even on the verge of dispatching someone to guard Koga. We can't make such a hasty decision based solely on Aizen's word. The Kuachiki-aligned judge countered instantly. And just like that, the room broke into an argument. Judges and sages quickly split into factions. A power struggle had erupted. One involving the nobility itself. And in a place as deeply rooted in corruption and decay as Central 46, a resolution would not come anytime soon. Chapter 83, Koga. Don't blame me for being heartless. Central 46? Is Soul Society legally liable? That's all. After taking a sweeping look at the scene, Aizen shook his head lightly. Having walked the Great Spirit Book Gallery with Aizen, he understood clearly why the aged Yamamoto Genri Uzai allowed such a twisted creation like Central 46 to continue existing. Thousands of years ago, Yamamoto Genri Uzai Shigakuni, along with the first-generation Captain Commander and Imperial Guard, led 13 Division of Imperial Guards as nothing more than a group of killers. How could you expect a bunch of Shinigami, born to slay hollows and execute orders, to form a government or write laws for Soul Society in its infancy? It was simply unrealistic. In truth, it was the noble clans. Especially the 5 great noble houses. Who stepped in and bent the regulations. Yamamoto held the sword, while the nobles wrote the laws. That alliance formed the Central 46 and the governing system of Siriite AI. These laws and institutions were shaped by Yamamoto Genri Uzai himself. So, how could he possibly dismantle them with his own hands? Even if Central 46 grew rotten to its core, as long as it still upheld the law, the head captain would never contradict its authority in public. The final value of Central 46 is about to run out, Aizen muttered. And when that time comes, this relic of the past, which exists only to obstruct justice, will vanish. Aizen's gaze swept over the 46 sages and judges like he was counting corpses. Cold, detached, utterly emotionless. The two exchanged glances. Not a word more was needed. In just a few short lines, they had quietly decided the fate of an institution that had governed Soul Society for thousands of years. Strangely, none of the 46 sages or judges seemed to hear them. No one looked their way, no one reacted. It was as though they weren't even there. Brother, Aizen spoke softly. It's almost time. We should go. If we're late, we'll miss a grand opening act. Aizen didn't move, as if he were waiting for a signal. After a moment of silence, he said, it's time. Aizen cast a final glance at the bickering judges and sages, his eyes brimming with mockery, then turned to leave. Aizen followed without hesitation. The two walked out of Central 46 openly, but to everyone watching. The guards in the shadows, the members of Central 46. They hadn't moved at all. In their eyes, the brothers were still standing quietly in place, awaiting the verdict. Kuachiki Mansion. Draped in luxurious silks, with a silver hairpin adorning her head, the daughter of the noble Kuachiki family knelt at the gate of an inner courtyard. Kuachiki Miyajun? Go back, came the cold, deep voice from inside the room. The punishment of blood burial cannot be changed. Not even I can stop it. You've already been granted a 1-month extension. That's the limit of divine mercy. The voice was Kuachiki Jinrai's. Father, you're the head of the Kuachiki clan and the captain of the 6th Division. You've served under the captain commander for centuries. You must have some way to save Koga. Are you really willing to see your daughter and her husband torn apart forever? To watch me grow old in this mansion? Alone? I don't ask you to pardon his crimes. But at least, please shorten his punishment. 3,000 years of blood burial. It's too much, father. Tears streamed down Miyajun's face as she pleaded. Silence. Jinrai's voice thundered. As a captain of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards, how could I show favoritism? Go back, The fate of Koga has already been decided. Tomorrow, I will personally carry out the blood burial. Even if you kneel outside this courtyard for 100 years or 1,000, it will not change a thing. Though his words were harsh, his heart ached. After all, Miyajun was his only daughter. She had only been married for a few decades. To spend the rest of her life in grief and solitude. It pained him deeply. But still. The eyes of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards were on him. The eyes of every noble clan were on him. To protect the Kuachiki name, to cleanse the stain left by Koga, he had no choice. He had to be the one to bury him. More importantly, he still needed to extract the fragments of the Soul King sealed within Koga. How could he allow Koga to live? Father. Miyajun's voice cracked with sorrow as she continued to kneel in the cold wind. But inside, Kuachiki Jinrai merely sighed. No compassion showed in his eyes. Instead, he summoned a servant. You stay and watch over Lady Miyajun, he ordered. Then, he quietly changed into the dark robes of the stealth force, fastened his Zunpacto at his waist, and disappeared into the night. From Kuachiki Mansion to the Repentance Palace wasn't a short trip. But Jinrai, a seasoned master of flash steps, arrived in just 30 minutes, careful to hide his spiritual pressure along the way. By now, the guards had long shifted their focus elsewhere. Silently, Jinrai slipped into the deepest cell of the 9th level without triggering a single alarm. There, in the gloom, he stood before the man once known as Kuachiki Koga. Koga. Don't blame me for being heartless. You were never accepted as my heir, but I still saw you as part of the family. I cultivated you with everything I had. If you had only listened, you could have risen through the ranks. Perhaps even stood beside the head captain himself. Before him lay a tall, once proud man in a white prison uniform, now gaunt and hollow-eyed. His limbs were bound by spirit-sealing shackles, forged by the 12th Division. Suppressing every trace of his spiritual pressure. There was no longer any sign of the elegant noble, the 3rd seat of the 6th Division, or the son-in-law of the Kuachiki family. You threw it all away, Jinrai whispered. But enough. The matter ends tonight. I will personally escort you to the next world. He placed his hand over the Kido seal and unlocked it without a sound. Step by step, he moved deeper into the cell. Koga, whose spiritual power was suppressed, remained unconscious. Even with Jinrai standing just in front of him. He stared at the man he once raised, then began to chant a complicated incantation under his breath. But, in that very moment, a crushing darkness surged out from every direction. Jinrai's eyes widened. It wasn't just the lights. His sight, his hearing, his sense of smell, his ability to feel spiritual energy. All of it vanished. All that remained was the sense of touch. Not good. His instincts screamed. Something had gone terribly, terribly wrong. Chapter 84. But Kuachiki Jinrai is not Yamamoto Genri Uzai. In the depths of the Repentance Palace, Tosen Kaname, who had lain dormant in silence for an entire month, suddenly opened his eyes. Though his visionless pupils remained dull and gray, his innate ability to sense spiritual pressure. Far beyond that of most Shinigami. Let him clearly feel the immense spiritual pressure approaching. It was calm on the surface, but beneath that calm was a turbulent wave, like a flood about to burst through a dam. A powerful spiritual pressure, he murmured inwardly. It's here at last. As Master Ain predicted. It's Kuachiki Jinrai. Without hesitation, Tosen Kaname adjusted his posture and silently moved into a blind spot outside Kuachiki Jinrai's perception. His right hand, hidden in the shadows, reached out and gripped the hilt of his Zunpacto tightly. Bunkai. Susumo Shitsu Ishiki, in Makoragi. A massive wave of black spiritual energy erupted from his body. Centered around him, a boundless black sphere rapidly expanded in all directions. Within the blink of an eye, the ellipsoid barrier of Makoragi engulfed the entire deep prison level. Including the oncoming Kuachiki Jinrai. And strangely, despite the enormous size and spiritual fluctuation of this barrier, the commotion went unnoticed by the outside world. Whether by luck, design, or deliberate shielding. No alarm sounded in the upper levels of Siriite AI. Inside the black dome of Makoragi. Vision. Hearing. Smell. Taste. Spiritual perception. All of it disappeared. Kuachiki Jinrai's expression changed instantly. In Makoragi. A Zunpacto of total sensory deprivation. Troublesome. He didn't need to analyze. His instincts. Refined through centuries of battle and command. Had already calculated the risk. With no hesitation, Kuachiki Jinrai roared, Bunkai. Manchukyo, Wankwan Kaikai. A roar of water answered the call. The dark space trembled violently. A flood of shimmering seawater erupted from Jinrai's feet and surged in all directions. The moment his Bunkai was activated, it swept through in Makoragi like a breaking dam. Water flooding into the realm of darkness, crashing against the invisible walls, trying to reclaim control. Jinrai's Bankai. Wonkwankai was one of the strongest water element Zanpakuto in Soul Society. The tide of spiritual water expanded rapidly, pushing toward the limits of the barrier. In mere seconds, the flow would fill in Mikuragi entirely, triggering a violent collapse of the illusion. But, clang! A cold light flashed, splitting through the darkness. Before the waves could overtake the entire barrier, a burst of spiritual pressure shot forward like a blade of divine steel. Tosen Kaname, having reached the peak of lieutenant-level strength under the training of Aizen, surged forward with both hands gripping Susumu tightly. His body moved like a shadow in the current, fusing with his blade to become a singular killing edge. He pierced through the crashing waves and drove his Zanpakuto deep into Kuachiki Jinrai's abdomen. Did it land? He wondered in the moment of silence that followed. But no. Yes. It did and didn't. The blade had aimed for the heart. But as spiritual pressure from Jinrai's Bankai surged outward, the overwhelming pressure bent the attack slightly off course. Tosen had rehearsed this strike in his inner world countless times. He had practiced for an entire month. Yet the moment came, and the chaotic torrents of spiritual pressure forced the blow to deviate at the final instant. But he felt no regret. No matter. This strike fulfilled Master Ain's will. Tosen Kaname stood firm, even as the weight of spiritual water pushed down around him. He hadn't come here simply to kill Kuachiki Jinrai. His mission was never about assassination. It was to shake the heart of Sairi Itai, the most cunning noble. To pierce the veil of his schemes. To rattle the cage. This single stab. Even if not fatal. Had done just that. Suddenly. Light returned. Pain followed. Sight, hearing, and smell returned to Kuachiki Jinrai's senses all at once. He glanced downward, and his gaze locked onto the face of his attacker. Tosen Kaname. A flash of cold realization crossed his aged face. Truly unexpected. A Shinigami born in Rakongai. A blind one at that. Not only did you master Bankai in less than a year, but you managed to land a blow on me. On me. Even Yoruichi of the Shuyuin clan and my grandson Byakuya haven't achieved what you just did. And here you are, nobody. Actually stabbing the head of the Kuachiki family. His words seemed to carry praise, but the tone dripped with bitterness. There was no joy in his voice. Only cold fury. He had been deceived. Koga had never been in a cell. This was Tosen Kaname from the very start. Somewhere along the line, the real Koga had vanished. And Tosen had taken his place, infiltrating the prison, enduring a month of imprisonment. All for this moment. Worse yet. All of this had been orchestrated by someone else. Ain. Kuachiki Jinrai's expression darkened. He hadn't seen through it at all. From the rebellion, to Koga's capture, to the infiltration of the cell. He had become a pawn. And worse. He was just now realizing it. How far has this web already spread? He thought bitterly. Is this merely the beginning? Tosen, despite his injury, remained silent. He watched as Jinrai's torrent of spiritual pressure continued to fill in Mikuragi, flooding the domain. He could already feel the illusion breaking. But he had accomplished his mission. Thanks to Ain, he had not only been smuggled into the prison, but had also tamed Susumu, who had once belonged to another. In just 1 month, he had awakened Bankai and made the power his own. It was Lord Aizen who forced Susumu to submit. It was Lord Aizen who taught me the true name of Bankai. And it is because of Brother Ain that I can stand here, blade to blade, with a noble of Soul Society. Because without that knowledge, without that training, no matter how well he planned, Tosen would have been powerless against someone like Kuachiki Jinrai. Even now, he knew the truth. While Wonkwankai was as famed as Rijinjaka among elemental types on Pakuto, Kuachiki Jinrai himself was no Yamamoto Genryuzai. The difference in power was vast. The only reason he had even managed to wound him was due to the compatibility of his Bankai and the element of surprise. Otherwise, even if he attacked with all his strength. He wouldn't have stood a chance. But now. The tides had shifted. The board had been flipped. The opening move had been played. Chapter 85. I really don't know which why you're asking about since you've seen the old man's Bankai. And you know that the Zanpakuto I wield is Wonkwankai, the strongest water element Zanpakuto second only to Rijinjaka. Then you should already understand. You're not walking out of this repentance palace alive. Kuachiki Jinrai's voice was like the roar of an ancient tide. Calm on the surface, but surging with pressure beneath. Speak. You've hidden in the shadows. Pulled strings behind the scenes. Taken Koga away, manipulated him, and sent you here to assassinate me. Confess. Even with blood still trailing from his abdomen, even while grasping the hilt of the Zanpakuto that had pierced him, Kuachiki Jinrai stood tall. Like an immovable cliff before a storm. Killing Tosen Kaname immediately was not the priority. What mattered more was discovering who the true mastermind was. The one who planned this. Who is it? Who took Koga away? Who gave you the order to come here and stab me? His voice rose, and so did his spiritual pressure. Each word he spoke poured into the chamber like crashing waves. The deep prison trembled under the pressure, as if drowning in a rising sea. Tosin Kaname stood in silence, shoulders tense. His face was calm, but his body betrayed him. Every muscle quivered under the weight of Kuichiki Jinrai's oppressive spiritual pressure. He had mastered Benkei, yes. But the gap between him and Kuichiki Jinrai was still vast. Not only in strength but in heritage, in experience, in sheer force of will. If it weren't for the surprise attack and the nature of Inbakuragi, he would have already been cut down. Speak. Kuichiki Jinrai's shout boomed like thunder in a canyon. His spiritual pressure surged violently, slamming toward Tosin like a tsunami. Patriarch Jinrai, Tosin finally replied, calm and steady despite the invisible crushing force bearing down on him. Lord Ayan asked me to greet you on his behalf. The words struck like lightning. Kuichiki Jinrai's pupils contracted in disbelief. His face stiffened. In that instant of shock, Tosin used his moment. Retracting his blade, leaping back, trying to break away from the churning sea of spiritual pressure. Ayan. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Kuichiki Jinrai regained himself quickly, voice rising in outrage. You're dying, Tosin Kaname. And you dare spout nonsense like that? You think using his name will protect you? To him, invoking Ayan's name was a cheap trick. Ayan. Who doted on his younger brother like no other. Ayan. Who had stood before Aizen after the assassination. How could someone like that be the architect of this entire scheme? In Kuichiki Jinrai's eyes, Tosin was gambling with the most unthinkable lie he could muster. But then... No, Captain Jinrai. A calm voice echoed from the shadows behind. Don't blame Tosin Kaname. He didn't lie. Kuichiki Jinrai froze. The voice was unmistakable. Even the roiling spiritual pressure in the room stilled for a moment, hanging like mist. Whether it's the blade in your stomach, or the hands behind this entire plan. It's me. Out from the shadows stepped a man. A long-sleeved houri swayed with each step. Short black hair. Framed glasses resting neatly across the bridge of his nose. Zanpakuto hanging from his waist. Kuichiki Jinrai turned sharply, breath caught in his throat. Ayan. It was you. You're the black hand behind all this? The words escaped him, not as a question. But as the dawning of truth. But Ayan only gave a gentle smile. Not just me, he said, correcting him casually. Us. As he stepped forward, another figure emerged behind him. He was dressed in standard black robes, no houri. But the resemblance was undeniable. Short brown hair. Framed glasses. Cool, unreadable expression. Aizen. Kuichiki Jinrai's knees nearly buckled. The shock reverberated through every fiber of his being. His mind, his instincts, his history. All cried out that this couldn't be. That the two brothers. Soul Society's youngest captains, the twin stars. Couldn't possibly be the conspirators behind this elaborate rebellion. Why? Why would you do this? He was furious. He was confused. He was utterly rattled. Ayan just tilted his head slightly. Why? You'll have to be more specific. Why did I separate you from Koga? Why did I force you to cast him aside? Why did I replace him with Tosin Kaname? Why let Tosin stab you? Why give you the chance to execute Koga? He let each question fall, like stones into a bottomless well. I've done so many things, I really don't know which why you're asking about. He spread his hands, smiling as if none of it concerned him. Kuichiki Jinrai's mouth opened, but no words came. He was a master of politics, schemes, and manipulation. But right now. He was being played by someone else's game. Amazing, isn't it? Ayan continued. How hard you worked to eliminate Koga. You were even willing to risk your daughter's grief. Even your family's face. All to get rid of him. And yet, that final strike was aimed at your own heart. Ayan turned toward his brother. Aizen, did you know? That blade Kyoka Suigetsu placed in your chest. It missed your heart by a hair. If I hadn't pulled my hand at the last moment, you'd be dead. He smiled again. A brother like that, are you sure he really treats you as family? Kuichiki Jinrai bit his lip, struggling to stay composed. He looked from Ayan to Aizen. If it were any other day, he would have challenged them. Fought them. Unleashed his Benkai again without hesitation. But now, his chest still bled from Tosin's earlier stab. His spiritual energy was fluctuating. And more than that. He didn't know what Ayan's Zanpakuto truly did. No one did. Not even Yamamoto Genryuzai. You've played us all. Ayan turned his gaze back toward him. You're not the first to realize that, he said calmly. Even Koga figured it out. Eventually. But there's a difference between knowing you're in a trap and escaping it. Silence hung between them. Then, Aizen pushed up his glasses slightly. You want to talk about deception, Captain Jinrai? Then let me ask you something. When did you start believing that my Kyokusuigetsu was hypnotized by Muramasa? His voice was soft, but the words dropped like a guillotine. What? Jinrai's eyes widened. Wait. Hypnosis. He staggered half a step back. Images flashed through his mind. Fragments of memory, distorted reflections, twisted illusions. Then clarity. It hit him like a thunderclap. Your Zanpakuto isn't Kyokusuigetsu at all. Or rather, what you've shown the world has never been its true ability. The realization struck with full force. And Aizen simply smiled. Oh? You've caught on. But if Kyokusuigetsu isn't of the water type, then what kind of Zanpakuto do you think it is, Captain Kuichiki? His voice was calm, teasing. Like a puppeteer speaking to a doll that had just noticed its strings. Kuichiki Jinrai didn't respond. He couldn't. The trap was already closed. And he had just realized he was standing in its center all along. Chapter 86. But I remembered. I remembered it well. Muramasa. Among all the illusion type Zanpakuto I've seen in my life, it is the strongest. Without question. Whether it's elemental type, Kido type, or even the most aggressive close-range Zanpakuto, none of them can resist the hypnosis cast by Muramasa. But among them, there is only one Zanpakuto completely immune to Muramasa's ability. The only exception. Kuichiki Jinrai's eyes narrowed as he stared directly at Aizen Sosuke. So Kyokusuigetsu isn't a flowing water type at all. It's an illusion type Zanpakuto. And not just any illusion type. It's the strongest. Only that explains it all. He drew in a deep breath. Even for someone of his composure, his expression betrayed true shock. As expected of the 6th Division's current captain. The one who brought the Kuichiki clan back to the peak of nobility in this generation. It seems the Kuichiki clan's archives really have preserved more than the world knows. For countless centuries, you've recorded every known Zanpakuto's name, attributes, and powers, haven't you? Aizen responded with a slight nod and a soft smile. Not only did he confirm Jinrai's statement, but in that single look, he also offered a rare gesture of praise. And what about you, Aizen? Now that the truth is exposed, there's no point hiding it. Aizen's Kyokusuigetsu is the apex of illusion. But your Zanpakuto. Kofu. What type is it? Jinrai turned his attention from the younger brother to the elder. Aizen simply replied with a calm tone. If that's your guess, then let me confirm it. Kofu. Zanpakuto of light and darkness. The strongest dual elemental Zanpakuto. A dual type. And both light and darkness. The strongest in each domain? Jinrai's pupil shrink. His jaw clenched. Even as the Kuichiki patriarch, whose knowledge of Soul Society's history rivaled anyone alive, even he hadn't heard of such a thing. In the endless cycles of history, twin Zanpakuto had emerged. Rare, powerful. But even they came in pairs. Not a single blade holding two supreme attributes. That's right. Aizen's tone remained casual, as if speaking about the weather. A gift, in return for your invaluable contribution to our hollow experiment, Captain Jinrai. His words, slow and deliberate, were like knives in Jinrai's chest. Aizen added with a hint of amusement, my elder brother holds the strongest dual elemental Zanpakuto in all of Soul Society. I hold Kyokusuigetsu. Supreme illusion type. Kuichiki Jinrai muttered something under his breath. Barely audible. And then it hit him. Wait. Hollow experiment? His voice suddenly turned sharp. He raised a trembling hand to his face. The place where Tosen Kaname's blade had pierced him now pulsed with an eerie sensation. Hollow. You dared to use hollowification. On me? The old noble's eyes widened in horror. Shock. Anger. His voice cracked under the weight of rage. He had spent the last few moments trying to understand their scheme. Testing, delaying, stalling for answers. But now something deep within his body stirred. A volatile force, foreign yet horrifyingly familiar. It wasn't just pain. It was like a new spiritual pressure, one completely opposed to his own, was clawing its way out from inside. A hollow's essence. Why else do you think we're here? Aizen answered with a faint smile. Why else would I bother telling you about Kofuon? Captain Jinrai, you should feel proud. You're the first Shinigami. Aside from Aizen. Who's witnessed the full truth about my Zanpakuto. That alone puts you above most in Soul Society. Besides, you're not a victim. You're the final stage of our experiment. We weren't stalling, Captain. We were just waiting for your hollowification to mature. As the weight of Aizen's words sank in, Aizen's gaze was fixed solely on Jinrai's body, watching closely. The spiritual fluctuations. The fusion. Or resistance. Between Shinigami and hollow spiritual pressure. Every change was a data point. I am the patriarch of the Kuichiki clan. A noble of royal blood. Do you have any idea how insane your actions are? tainting the nobility with hollow. Even a Captain Imperial Guard would never escape judgment for this. His voice cracked with both fury and desperation. But the moment he tried to calm himself, boom! The hollow spiritual pressure inside him flared violently, threatening to erupt. Jinrai staggered, using Wanquan Kaikai as a cane, forcing his spiritual pressure to push back the invading force. But the effort was enormous. Sweat drenched his brow. Interesting. Aizen muttered. I've used dozens of prisoners from the Repentance Palace. Once proud Shinigami. But none of them survived more than seconds into hollowification. They either exploded into spiritual dust, or dissolved into nothing. But you suppressed it. You resisted it. And your spiritual pressure is increasing? Is it the absurd spiritual density of a Captain Imperial Guard? Or perhaps, is it your noble bloodline that gives you this edge? Kuachiki Jinrai didn't reply. His breathing ragged, his hand trembling against the hilt of his blade. But Aizen wasn't done. Why you ask? You chose us, Captain Jinrai. Aizen's voice dropped to a calm chill. You made that choice long ago. At those words, Jinrai's eyes widened again. And then he remembered. His pupils constricted, his breathing hitched. Aizen smiled. You remember now. The attack on 2 first-year students in the Shino Academy dormitories. A minor incident, dismissed by the Kuachiki clan. But I remembered. I remembered it well. Aizen stepped forward, his voice sharp with each syllable. Hirako Shinji was humiliated in a public spar by me. And lost everything overnight. And then, in our dormitory, you sent an assassin. You tried to kill me, and my brother. Tell me, Captain Jinrai. Did you really think I'd forget? You struck first. We're just finishing what you started. Koga? Dead. Muramasa? Seized. You? Aizen's smile grew sharper. You are our most perfect specimen yet. And believe me, this is only the beginning. Chapter 87, Benkai to Benkai. But the difference is this great? The attack on you and your brother at Shino Academy has nothing to do with me or the Kuachiki clan. The captain commander had already dispatched someone to secretly investigate. In fact, he already knows who is behind it. But because that person is of unusual status, and to prevent you from acting recklessly, he chose not to inform you until there was solid proof. Despite the pain of hollowification surging through his body, Kuachiki Jinrai maintained a calm tone. You've misunderstood me. Stop this. It's still not too late. Aizen. With the contributions you've made to the Soul Society. And considering how dearly the Captain Commander holds you both. It's still not too late to turn back. He was trying to persuade them, albeit through shallow, halting breath. Aizen stared at him with interest. Then, calmly, he said a name, Byakuya Kuachiki. Kuachiki Jinrai's expression remained composed, but deep in the eerie yellow of his eyes. A flicker of recognition. So, they knew. They had known from the very beginning. From the moment he asked his grandson, Byakuya, to test Aizen during his early days at Shino Academy, the seeds were already sown. Now, those seeds have bloomed. So this is why. Why did this pair of brothers so precisely and thoroughly target him? And the Kuachiki family? It seems. I truly did not misjudge your talents. You two are geniuses the Soul Society hasn't seen in thousands of years. Not just in strength, or mastery over Zanpakuto, but in will, in manipulation, in strategy. But you've misjudged me. And you've gravely underestimated the Kuachiki clan. Kuachiki Jinrai exhaled a cloud of spiritual mist. Tinged with traces of hollow essence. Still, he did not falter. His hand tightened around his Zanpakuto as he slowly rose to his feet. Only seconds ago, his spiritual pressure had been in chaos. His body barely able to stay upright. But now, though his spiritual pressure still writhed with turbulence, its density and intensity had begun to rise. The pain receded. The hollowness in his gaze sharpened. Who do you think I am? What do you think the Kuachiki family is? Aizen. You're indeed extraordinary. Commoners who rose to shake the entire nobility in only a few short months. But your one mistake was thinking you had already won. You've let your low-born roots limit your sight. With every word, Kuachiki Jinrai's spiritual pressure surged. As a veteran captain who had ruled over the 6th Division for centuries, his power was unmatched by most. In all of 13 Division of Imperial Guards, only Yamamoto Genri Uzai and Anohana Yachiru stood firmly above him in spiritual pressure. Even legends like Shun Sakuraku and Yukitake Joshiro, or the yet-to-be-promoted members of Squad Zero, like Garyo Hikaifun and Shutara Senjamaru, could not confidently claim superiority. And now that he was undergoing hollowification, his spiritual pressure had broken past its limits. It was still climbing. You experimented on me. Thinking I'd fall like the rest of your test subjects? You expected me to lose control, To become a broken husk for your amusement? You were wrong. I know hollowification better than you do. With a sudden flash, he raised his Zanpakuto and slashed. Boom. A thunderous blast shook the room as his spiritual pressure carved a rift through the storming sea of spiritual pressure. The arc of force condensed into a colossal wave of sword pressure. Shaped like a dragon bursting from the sea. And thundered toward Tosen Kaname. Boom. Tosen's eyes widened. He had sensed the disparity before. But not like this. In one blow, he was launched through the turbulent current of spiritual pressure, his body twisting in midair before crashing down violently. He coughed up blood mid-flight. He was heavily injured. Bankai to Bankai. But the difference is this great? Submerged within the tide of energy, Tosen's thoughts spiraled in disbelief. Just one strike. One casual slash. And he hadn't been able to stop it. His Bankai, Suzumo Shitsuishiki, in Mikoragi, was still active. His spiritual pressure was formidable. At the level of Muguruma Kinsai. And yet, Kuichiki Jinrai's single sword pressure had overwhelmed him entirely. Foolish boy. Did you think achieving Bankai meant you stood at my level? Bankai is only the beginning. A Zanpakuto's Shikai and Bankai evolve as its wielder grows. Your Bankai is but a child's sword dance to me. Kuichiki Jinrai's voice was cold and condescending, but his words struck true. Tosen, still coughing blood, clenched his teeth. So that's the gap. So large that it could not be crossed by skill or will alone. It would take years. Decades. Lord Aizen. Lord Ain. I'm not ready. His mind wavered. Withdraw, Tosen. Ain's voice cut through the chaos like a blade of clarity. Do not let anger cloud your judgment. Do not let hate corrupt your reason. Captain Jinrai's words may be cruel, but they are not wrong. The ability of your Bankai. The element of surprise. It only works once. Use it again. And your Zanpakuto will be shattered. Tosen's eyes widened as the implications sank in. If his Bankai was broken, he would lose everything. He fell back, wounded and ashamed. But also thankful. Thankful that Ain had intervened before he lost more than just pride. Smart choice. Kuichiki Jinrai narrowed his eyes. A pity. He'd hoped Tosen would trigger the Bankai again. He knew in Mikoragi well. If Tosen had dared open the field once more, both Ain and Aizen would be blinded. Along with himself. But only he had a way to bypass the sensory deprivation. Using the flow of water and spiritual pressure, he could still perceive everything inside. He could have used Tosen's own ability to launch a counteroffensive. But now, that chance was gone. Still, his eyes flickered with hollow spiritual pressure once more. This wasn't over. Not yet. Chapter 88, You are exactly the man we predicted. I didn't expect it. You two went through so much trouble, setting everything up just to make me into a hollowification experiment subject. But in the end, the power of the hollow is mine to control. Kuichiki Jinrai's voice was cold and steady, even with the hollow spiritual pressure raging inside him. His expression no longer reflected confusion or panic. Only fierce pride. This is the difference between commoners and nobles. From the moment of birth, our paths are set. It's not about talent. Not about potential. And certainly not something as crude as a Zanpakuto could ever make up for. Let alone surpass. Although he regretted not being able to borrow Tosen Kaname's Bankai and reverse the situation, Jinrai's voice brimmed with confidence. He spoke like someone who held the upper hand, like someone who saw everything clearly. No matter how many schemes you lay. No matter how deep your trap. You never expected that even before the 10,000-year era, our Kuichiki clan had already begun conducting hollowification experiments. Though they were abandoned. The knowledge was never lost. Your birth limits your vision. Your bloodline limits your knowledge. But me? My Zanpakuto. Enhanced by hollowification. I stand in a different dimension than you now. He turned his gaze from Ain to Aizen, and back again. Understand, Ain Sosuke? Understand, Aizen Sosuke? His voice was sharp, slicing through the spiritual pressure-drenched air. I appreciate your generosity, truly. Telling me so much. Revealing your intent. But you've already lost. Your arrogance gave me the time I needed. Your recklessness allowed me to fully integrate the hollow's power. He stood tall, a mix of regal poise and hollow madness. But then Ain's expression shifted. Not with surprise. Not with fear. But with a calm nod. As if everything had gone exactly as expected. You are exactly the man we predicted, Captain Jinrai. Ain's voice was low and confident, almost satisfied. Able to suppress the hollowification. Even adapt to it. You have our thanks. Aizen stepped forward slightly, shaking his head gently. We weren't hoping for your defeat. We were observing. And now, we've gathered what we needed. You've helped us complete the final phase of our experiment. So thank you, Chief of the Kuichiki clan. Jinrai's eyes narrowed. A heavy tension pressed against his chest. What do you mean by that? He clenched his Zanpakuto. Are you trying to soothe your loss with empty words? It's pointless. With my hollow enhanced spiritual pressure, I'll crush you both. But Ayan didn't respond to the provocation. Instead, he slowly reached for his Zanpakuto. Then stopped. Captain Jinrai. There's just one more thing we need from you. One final step. Help us test the limits. We want to know. How far can a noble Shinigami go once hollowified? His tone didn't mock. It was deadly serious. Scientific. Cold. To Jinrai, that was the most terrifying part. This wasn't personal. He was a subject, an experiment, a tool used to break through the Shinigami's limits. You let me hollow-fi. On purpose? Jinrai's voice shook, just slightly. The realization hit like a thunderclap. His efforts to delay, to adapt, to stabilize, all of it, had been part of their plan. They weren't caught off guard. They'd been observing the entire time. And now, they were ready to record the results. Jinrai's skin crawled. He felt like a cadaver under dissection. Every cell analyzed, every action preordained. Ayan's hand hovered over his sword once more. And then, a voice echoed in his head. Your Kido is dissatisfied, you've neglected him lately, relying too much on Zanpakuto, he wants to fight. In exchange, he offers you a brand new forbidden Kido spell. Designed just for you. Ayan smiled faintly. A custom forbidden Kido, is it? How interesting. He lowered his hand from his sword. Very well. You may dance tonight. His spiritual eyes gleamed. Unlike other Shinigami, whose Kido was taught in rigid numbered systems. Hado from number 1 to number 99, Bakudo from number 1 to number 99. Ayan had gone beyond. Even Yamamoto Genryuzai, the founder of Spiritual Arts Academy, had only chosen the most refined spells to form the numbered sequence taught across the 13 division of Imperial Guards. But Ayan's Kido wasn't born from that legacy. His power came from something deeper, wilder, and far more personal. Kido that was alive. And tonight, it will sing. Jinrai saw Ayan reach for his sword. Then stop. He narrowed his eyes. What's the meaning of this? Ayan smiled faintly. Nothing. I just changed my mind. Captain Jinrai, I don't think you're worthy of dying by my Zanpakuto. So I'll use Kido to end your hollowification. And send you on your way. Jinrai's spiritual pressure trembled. His hollow aura flickered. You arrogant little brat. Is this all to mock me? His fury surged. You dare. Ain't so's. He roared. His hollowified golden yellow eyes burned with hatred. He was the captain of the 6th Division. The man who had revived the glory of the Kuachiki clan. The wielder of Wanquan Kaike, the strongest flowing waters Zanpakuto. And yet this upstart said he wasn't even worthy of being slain by his blade? Under the swelling rage and unstable hollowification. He snapped. All rivers converge. His voice shook the walls. Spiritual pressure exploded outward in every direction, forming a howling sea of spiritual energy that swallowed the entire Repentance Palace in an instant. The waves were crashing, alive. The building cracked. The sky above howled. And at the center of it all stood Kuachiki Jinrai, hollow mask partially forming across his face, screaming in madness and fury. Chapter 89, That is why. I have never once believed I could surpass him. Faced with Kuachiki Jinrai, who had flown into a hollow-fueled rage and summoned a monstrous flood of spiritual pressure capable of submerging the entire Senzaku, both Aizen and Tozen Kaname vanished instantly. In the blink of an eye, they reappeared. Standing calmly in midair above the raging torrent. Where is Aizen? Kuachiki Jinrai's sharp eyes swept across the sky, locking briefly on Aizen and Tozen standing not far away. When he didn't spot his target, his eyes narrowed further. He immediately released a new pulse of spiritual pressure consciousness, sweeping the surroundings, searching for Aizen's position. But the next voice didn't come from around. It came from behind him. Captain Jinrai, are you looking for me? That calm voice struck like thunder. Jinrai's pupils shrank in shock. In that instant, his body reacted faster than his thoughts. He slashed backward instinctively with all his strength. Boom. The moment the blade moved, the spiritual pressure current at his feet surged in unison. The water rose in a massive crescent slash, turning into a monstrous scythe-like wave. Crashing down upon Aizen's figure with mountainous force. Splash. Yet, when the water cut through the target, no blood sprayed. No flesh tore. The figure that had been struck wavered, like a reflection disturbed by a stone. And faded. An afterimage. Kuachiki Jinrai's breath hitched. His spiritual pressure consciousness instantly spread again. Swish. He snapped his head toward another direction. Aizen's form once again appeared at the edge of his perception. Without hesitation, Jinrai launched another strike. Reverse Dragon Halberd. From the swirling sea of spiritual pressure, a massive trident with a dragon's head, formed entirely from concentrated water spiritual pressure, burst out and speared forward. Tearing through Ain's torso. But again, the wound shimmered and vanished. Another afterimage. This flash steps. It's beyond what even the head of the Shioing family could achieve. 2 deadly strikes. Both failed. Kuachiki Jinrai felt a rare twinge of fear gnaw at the edge of his mind. The pressure was building. Don't underestimate the Kuachiki family. He plunged his Zanpakuto into the sea of spiritual pressure. Boom. With a roar that tore the night apart, hundreds of spiritual pressure water dragons broke free from the flood below. Their giant serpentine bodies coiled, swirled, and launched into the air, scattering destruction across the entire penitentiary. Wherever they passed, the air itself warped. Compressed until it rippled like liquid. It was a terrifying attack. One only a Zanpakuto of the highest elemental class could unleash. Yet, even as he called down destruction, Ain remained calm. Serene, even. He neither drew his Zanpakuto nor unleashed any attack. He moved only with flash steps, weaving between the dragons with effortless grace. Whenever a dragon struck, the image flickered. Another afterimage. Again. And again. Ain danced among the dragons. Gliding, twisting, stepping through the gaps like water slipping through a sieve. Not a scale touched him. Not a thread of his robes was torn. He was untouchable. A god among dragons. Aizen-sama. Is this really okay? Tosen Kaname's voice wavered with concern as he looked toward Aizen. He's fighting the Kuachiki clan head. He holds Wankwan Kaikai. The strongest Zanpakuto of the flowing water type. And he's already hollow-fied. The explosion of spiritual pressure here is enormous. Even with a barrier in place, 13 Division of Imperial Guards will sense it. If this drags on too long, we'll have to evacuate and recover. From his perspective, Ain should have ended the battle already. A single fatal blow. Clean, decisive. There was no need to toy with someone like Kuachiki Jinrai. But Aizen only smiled. He looked at Tosen and replied with faint amusement in his voice, "Do you believe that my brother's strength is rooted in his Zanpakuto?" Tosen blinked. Aizen continued, "If so, then you've misunderstood. Kafuan is terrifying, yes. But it's only one part of a whole. My brother's strength lies not in a single piece. But in all 6 pieces. Kido. Kendo. Flash steps. Hand-to-hand combats. Spiritual pressure. Zanpakuto. All of them. Every single discipline that defines a Shinigami. He excels in. None are weak. All are superior. That is why, Tosen. I have never once believed I could surpass him. That's why. He's my goal." Tosen stood speechless. He had believed Aizen to be an unreachable peak. To hear Aizen declare Ain as the one beyond that peak. He was stunned. Flash steps. Improved again? Kuachiki Jinrai was still mid-combat. Suddenly, Ain vanished. Not like before. This time. Even his spiritual pressure consciousness couldn't catch up. That was when something touched him. Tap. A faint pressure on the back of his head. His eyes widened. His body froze. Though it was only a finger, gently resting against his skull. A chill colder than death itself surged through his spine. It raced up from his feet, through every muscle, every nerve, until it erupted behind his eyes. In panic, Jinrai reacted. Atsuzumi. A technique from the Shioing family's secret arts, Empty Cicada allowed him to leave behind a replica and evade in an instant. His body vanished. Ain simply watched him flee, retracting his hand calmly. His voice was low. Almost amused. Hado number 90, Black Coffin. Chapter 90. He wanted to see with his own eyes. Boom. With a thunderous crash, Ain's upturned palm burst with jagged bolts of purple-black spiritual pressure lightning, cold and ominous, making one's blood run cold at a glance. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. From the 4 corners surrounding Kuachiki Jinrai, streaks of that same purple-black energy extended outward. Up, down, left, right. The line surged through space and, at their edges, deep, shimmering light curtains rose, connecting the beams in a perfect, towering enclosure. In the blink of an eye, those interwoven streams of light formed an enormous black rectangular monolith, so vast it pierced the heavens, so dark it swallowed the world. A single look confirmed its name, Kurohitsugi. The Black Coffin. The infamous Hado number 90, Black Coffin, capable of burying even a captain-level Shinigami. Now cast with a casual palm strike. Kuachiki Jinrai was now sealed within it. But the terror was only beginning. As the purple-black wall stabilized, the illusionary spiritual pressure transformed. Solidified. The Black Coffin, which moments ago flickered like a mirage, was becoming real. Its very form shifted, drawing ever closer to the complete incantation version recorded in the Kido Encyclopedia. A forbidden level of destructive potential. If the earlier Black Coffin resembled a weakened, no-chant version Aizen used during his defection at Sokioka Hill, then this was rapidly approaching the full chant version. The one Aizen only dared unleash with a Hogyoku embedded in his soul. And it didn't stop there. Sing. Dozens of cross-shaped blades fell like divine punishment from the heavens. They pierced the surface of the Kurihitsugi, radiating a destructive force that twisted and distorted the very atmosphere within. Inside, gravity collapsed. Each strike from within twisted the internal space, collapsing it on itself like a star folding inward. The powerful gravitational force tore through Jinrai's flesh and bones, cracking his body and spirit alike. That's Hado number 90, Black Coffin. And, without chanting, Tosin Kaneme's breath hitched in shock. His lips moved, but the words stopped. His blind eyes opened wide, reflecting his total disbelief. Even though he could not see it, he felt it. The spiritual pressure. Its scale, its density, its raw-crushing force. Was unmistakable. Aizen finished the sentence for him. Yes. Even without incantation, my brother's Kurihitsugi carries 2/3 the power of full chant. He smiled faintly behind his glasses, speaking calmly. With this much power, even a captain with spiritual pressure on the level of like Muguruma Kinsai would be severely injured instantly and lose all ability to fight. But before the words could settle, boom. The unexpected happened. The Black Coffin, which had reached near complete formation, did not dissipate. Instead, as Aizen and Tosin watched with widened eyes, more beams of purple-black light emerged from the outer edges of the original Kurihitsugi. Another formation. Another structure. A second Black Coffin began to build around the first. And then a third. Triple. Aizen looked calmly at the behemoth of spiritual power forming before him. The second Kurihitsugi formed over the first. Its energy denser, darker. And then the third layered over the second. A triple-layered Kurihitsugi. One after another, the three Black Coffins stacked over each other, sealing the imprisoned Kuichiki Jinrai within a layered grave of gravity, darkness, and space rupture. Crack. Hiss. RRKK. The oppressive sound of space cracking and material collapsing echoed out. The gravitational pull became so extreme that even the skies over Soul Society twisted into a vortex, warping like ink spirals. The spiritual pressure current that had submerged the entire Senzoku was sucked in and disappeared without a trace. Even Tosin Kaname, already prepared for the unexpected, felt fear seize his spine. This level of spiritual pressure distortion. It might collapse the barrier around Soul Society. He couldn't help but imagine the sky itself cracking apart under the weight of Aizen's triple Kurihitsugi. And then, crack. A single fracture line. Like shattering porcelain, the three Kurihitsugi layers began to crack. One after the other. Crack. 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 Purple-black fragments, each formed of near-solidified spiritual pressure, scattered like glass under pressure. Finally. Boom. The triple Black Coffins shattered into dust. The twisted sky slowly corrected itself, the vortex of space evaporated, and below, a grotesquely twisted figure floated, bleeding from every pore. PFFSSH. As Aizen lowered his palm, droplets of blood mist erupted violently from the mangled figure. Limbs gone. Zanpakuto severed. Only a ruined, blood-soaked torso remained, floating in the air like a corpse rejected by gravity. Drip. Drip. Blood fell onto the floor of the Senzoku, painting the ancient stone red. Kuichiki Jinrai's Zanpakuto Wankwan Kaike, which had fallen beside him, was also stained in red. His eyelids fluttered. He opened his eyes. Barely. Within those broken pupils, waves of disbelief, terror, pain, and confusion rippled endlessly. Yan. He barely managed to speak the name. His lips trembled, blood streaming from his jaw. Snap. As if that word was the last breath he could muster, the remains of his body collapsed next to his Zanpakuto, unmoving. Silence. Complete silence. Even the sound of blood pooling on stone was drowned out by the overwhelming quiet. Only one sound broke it: gulp. Tosin Kaname involuntarily swallowed a mouthful of saliva. The dry noise echoed like thunder. Triple. Triple casting of Kurihitsugi. Even without incantation. Each with 2/3 of full power. Is this even something a Shinigami can do? His lips trembled. He couldn't even see the figure before him. But in his mind, a perfect image had formed. A god standing above the battlefield, smiling faintly, his palm lowered, calmly watching the death of a noble who once stood at the pinnacle of Soul Society. That figure. That presence. Tosin Kaname, blind and long since resigned to never seeing light again, felt for the first time a desperate yearning. He wanted to see. He wanted his sight back. He wanted to see Aizen. To see with his own eyes. The man he had pledged himself to. Was he stern? Heroic? Cruel? Or simply divine? Chapter 91, Still breathing after all that? Abandoned chanting? Wrong. Aizen's eyes narrowed slightly, his gaze lingering on the dissipating black haze of the triple black coffin, as he slowly analyzed what he had just witnessed. Casting a Hado number 90, black coffin, or above doesn't just demand high Kido mastery. It also requires massive reserves of spiritual pressure. If an ordinary Captain Imperial Guard tries to cast a 90 class Kido without chanting, it usually won't activate at all. Even if it does, it's already a miracle if it retains just a third of the original power. His gaze returned to Ayan, standing calmly in the air, his expression unchanging, as though casting triple black coffin was nothing more than idle recreation. But just now, my brother performed not one, not two, but 3 black coffins. Without a chant. Without a scratch. Without effort. Each one carried 2/3 the power of a fully chanted Kido number 90. Even if he possesses a spiritual pressure exceeding level 30 rank. 5 times greater than someone like Muguru Makinsai. That alone should not be enough to sustain such a feat. Unless. Aizen's thoughts spun rapidly, every piece of the puzzle assembling in his mind. Unless he has created something new. A 5th technique. One beyond the known forms of Kido chanting. Abandonment. Full incantation. Double chanting. Pseudo-duplication. And now. Discarded chanting. The moment the term crossed his thoughts, Aizen understood it all. He had just witnessed a new technique. One that exceeded every Kido casting method in Soul Society's 1,000-year history. Aizen's lips curled slightly. I thought I knew everything about you. But once again, you've proven me wrong, brother. Not long ago, Aizen had perfected his own version of improved full chanting, pushing even the strongest spells to 200% of their base power. He had planned to show it off soon. To surprise Ayan with it. But now, he quietly buried the idea. If I'd used it, I would have only embarrassed myself. He couldn't help but laugh inwardly. Just then, a notification echoed in Ayan's mind. Your Kido is extremely satisfied after being used in battle. Delighted by the opportunity to dance and defeat the wielder of the strongest water-type Sunpacto with your new technique, it has rewarded you with a custom Kido forbidden technique, Golden Light Spell. Ayan raised an eyebrow. A forbidden spell? He quickly understood its effect. Hado destroys. Bakudo seals. But this spell combines both. A hybrid Kido. Defense and defense in perfect unity. He nodded in approval. No wonder it's classified as forbidden. Other Shinigami might spend decades. Centuries even. Trying to develop original spells. Even the likes of Koga, with centuries of Kuachiki heritage and access to ancient Kido scrolls, had only managed to create a Hado comparable to level 80. But him? Ayan had only been a Shinigami for a few months. And already, he had a self-created Kido technique, a custom forbidden spell, and could cast triple black coffin without chanting. His talent was not just rare. It was divine. From behind, Aizen's voice drifted in. That was your own casting technique, wasn't it? Ayan turned slightly. His younger brother was floating through the air, eyes gleaming with anticipation. Triple black coffin. That's not possible without a new Kido technique. You must have created it. Ayan didn't deny it. Yes. I created it while I was still studying at the Shino Academy. I call it discarded chanting. Aizen blinked. Then smiled. Discarded chanting. An elegant name. Combining the speed of chantless casting with the power retention of double chant and pseudo-duplication. And still retaining power comparable to full incantation. Optimized even beyond that. A soft exhale escaped Aizen's lips. It's a technique far beyond the grasp of Soul Society's so-called Kido masters. Compared to you, even the highest instructors of the Kido Corps are still crawling. His words were laced with genuine admiration. But also something deeper. A simmering resolve. But even so, I won't fall behind you, brother. Ayan paused. He saw the flicker in Aizen's eyes. The determination. The silent challenge. And so, he made a decision. Then I won't teach it to you. He smiled faintly. You wouldn't accept it anyway. You'd rather bleed for 1,000 years than learn it from someone else. Aizen didn't respond, but the amused twitch at the corner of his mouth said enough. That was exactly right. Suddenly, a voice rasped from the shadows. Yan. It was low. Guttural. Choked with blood and hatred. The brothers turned. The source? Kuachiki Jinrai. Still alive. His 4 limbs were gone, reduced to mist. His body was mangled and twisted. And yet his head remained. His voice crawled from his throat like a curse. Ayan's brow lifted in mild surprise. Captain Jinrai. Still breathing after all that? Impressive. He approached calmly, hands folded behind his back, watching as Jinrai's blood pooled beneath him. Triple black coffin, each cast holding 2/3 the full power. That much force should have turned your soul into vapor. Yet you're still clinging to life. He crouched. Even I underestimated you. Jinrai's mouth twitched. His yellow, hollowed eyes burned with an almost feral resentment. Aang looked down at him, not with contempt, but curiosity. Fascinating. You endured one of the deadliest keto combinations ever cast. 4 limbs obliterated. Spiritual pressure twisted beyond recognition. But your head. He reached out and lightly tapped Jinrai's forehead. Still intact. Tosin Kaname, watching from behind, swallowed audibly. The silence in the ruined palace of repentance was deafening. Even the spiritual currents in the air seemed to pause in reverence or fear. Aang stood up straight, the silence heavy around him. You won't survive the next one. He didn't say it as a threat. He said it like a doctor giving a prognosis. Like a scientist observing the final stage of an experiment. Aizen approached silently. He looked at what was left of the once proud captain of the 6th Division. The Kuachiki family's pillar. And then to his brother. The one who had reduced him to this state. And yet this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something even greater. The boundaries of the Shinigami race were beginning to crack. And Aang was the one holding the chisel. Chapter 92. Is far too valuable to discard. Aren't these people dead? Tosin Kaname stared at Kuachiki Jinrai. No arms, no legs, drenched in blood and half crushed. Yet instead of fading, his spiritual pressure continued to rise. Not weakening. Strengthening. TSK. Suddenly, Kuachiki Jinrai's mangled torso exhaled thick white spiritual pressure. It wrapped around his wounds like bandages, but more than just healing. They writhed, squirming, and grew. From the torn flesh, limbs began to regenerate, thick and sinewy like those of a lizard, sprouting fingers, elbows, knees. His severed body stood again. Interesting. Aizen's gaze was calm, but beneath that serene surface, his thoughts raced. Captain Jinrai. Do you truly desire to live so desperately? Not only did you preserve your life with hollow power, but you even accelerated the hollow process, achieving high-speed regeneration. Is it the influence of the royal bloodline flowing in your veins? The scene before him was remarkable. Unprecedented. The Kuachiki clan patriarch, captain of the 6th Division, a noble with royal lineage, had not only survived a triple-layered Hado No. 90, black coffin, but was thriving under hollowification. This wasn't merely survival. This was adaptation. Aizen's fingers slowly curled into a thoughtful pose. Could it be? The noble clans have hidden this from Soul Society for generations? What? Aang turned his head lazily, eyes scanning Aizen's expression. Thinking of experimenting on the other noble houses too? Aizen didn't deny it. Just one sample. Kuachiki Jinrai. Gave better data than 1,000 death row inmates combined. The Kuachiki, then the Shioin, perhaps even the Tsunayashiro and Shiba. A shadow crossed his expression. Yes, we'll need them all. Aang shrugged, smiling faintly. Then let's go. It's about time we hosted a hollow feast at the Kuachiki estate. At those words, Kuachiki Jinrai, standing once more with rebuilt limbs and a tattered mask forming over half his face, roared. You dare. You dare attack the Kuachiki family. His voice had lost all calm and nobility, now warped and broken, tainted by hollow madness. But Aang's tone remained light. Why wouldn't we? You think you alone, a mere captain, would earn our personal attention? You, Koga. Was merely our experiment's opening act. Kuachiki Jinrai's mind teetered between rage and panic. It wasn't me. He shouted. I didn't order the attack on your dormitory. The ones who targeted Aizen and you. They weren't of the Kuachiki family. He hoped. Perhaps desperately. That logic might sway them, that some sliver of rationality still lived within the monsters before him. But Aang's smile only deepened, cruel and cold. Don't degrade yourself, Captain. A noble house should face consequences as a whole. You taught us that yourself when you called the deaths of 2 Shinigami students a trivial matter unworthy of the Kuachiki name. That final jab shattered what was left of Jinrai's mind. Aang. He howled like a beast. A hollow mask fully formed across his face, and his eyes. Golden, cracked with black veins. Burned with killing intent. He raised his hand, and from the center of his palm, a dense, scarlet sphere of spiritual pressure condensed rapidly. Sero. High-speed regeneration. Sero. Loss of rationality. This is full hollowification, Aizen noted calmly, eyes tracking every flicker of spiritual pressure. But, he muttered, disappointment evident, no control. No balance. No transcendence. He's powerful, yes. But what use is power without mind? This is no Vizard. This is just a beast. Lord Aizen, Tosin said, stepping forward. If this is the case, let me destroy him. I'll activate Benkei, Suzumo Shitsuishiki, in Mikoragi, strip his senses, and strike him down. No, Aang interrupted. Tosin paused. Let him live, Ayan said with an amused glance toward the thrashing Kuachiki captain. Since he wants to cling to life so badly, let him. A fully hollowified royal-blooded captain is far too valuable to discard. Tosin frowned. But what if he recovers? What if the Kuachiki family reverses the hollowification somehow? Ayan's eyes glinted. Then let them. If the nobles truly can reverse hollowification, wouldn't that just be another variable in our research? More data. We're not just reshaping the 13 Division of Imperial Guards, Kanem. We're redefining the entire system of Soul Society. With that, Ayan turned, brushing dust from his sleeve. Behind them, the mad beast that was once Captain Kuachiki Jinrai shrieked at the heavens and charged once more, a second Zero already forming. Aizen stepped forward, but Ayan raised a hand. No need. As Jinrai leapt into the sky, screaming his hate, Ayan vanished from sight. Flash steps? No. Even Aizen had trouble tracking his movement. Before Jinrai could release the Zero, a glowing golden seal appeared beneath him. The air cracked. Auto, forbidden technique, Ogan Noro, golden light curse. From that golden sigil, pillars of pure light erupted upward, engulfing the raging hollow. They wrapped around him like chains, infused with both destructive force and spiritual imprisonment. Jinrai's scream was cut off as the golden light constricted around his body, suppressing his spiritual pressure and dragging him down into unconsciousness. His body, once ablaze with hollow energy, fell silent. Bound in Keto light. Tosin's mouth dropped open. Aizen raised an eyebrow. Ayan smiled. Chapter 93, I told you once. I'd keep watching you. Yes, your worries are meaningless. The process of hollowification is irreversible. Captain Jinrai has fully hollowified. There's no coming back from that. And as my brother said, killing him now would just be a waste. Let him live in this state. That way, Captain Jinrai can still serve us one last time. Unlike Tosin Kanem, Aizen understood immediately what Ayan meant. Still help us? How can a fully hollowified, mindless Kuachiki clan head help anyone? And even if he had kept his mind, he'd only hate us. Though Tosin couldn't make sense of it, he followed Ayan's order and stepped back, sheathing his sword. Meanwhile, Jinrai Kuachiki, now completely hollowified, roared like a beast and raised his arm. The scarlet glow of a charged Zero began to build in his palm, its dense spiritual pressure shaking the floor of the Senzaku. But before it could be unleashed, whoosh! Ayan vanished and reappeared instantly before the hollowified Jinrai, extending a single finger directly into the heart of the Zero. Z. A spiral of compressed spiritual energy twisted around his fingertip, pulled inward as if sucked into a tiny black hole. No detonation. No damage. The entire Zero vanished. A tiny, dark Uzumaki, no wider than a fingernail, spun quietly at Ayan's fingertip. Its presence so subtle that even experienced eyes could miss it if they weren't paying attention. Impossible. Tosin muttered. Roar. Jinrai howled in confusion, the hollow mask across his face contorting. Even in his berserker state, he sensed something was wrong. Bakudo number 63, ethereal binding chain. Ayan lightly tapped the hollow mask with his index finger. Shing. 10 golden chains of spiritual pressure burst from the air, wrapping around Jinrai like living serpents. They pinned his arms, legs, mask, and torso. Completely immobilizing him. He could no longer swing his blade, use flash steps, or even twitch a finger. Of course. Abandoning incantation while still layering a level. Bakudo number 63, ethereal binding chain. 10 times. My brother hasn't just mastered high-level Kido. He's surpassing the known boundaries of it. If he wanted to, he could layer Kirahitsugi the same way. Aizen watched with unconcealed awe. Lord Ayan, Tosin interrupted with a frown, Captain Jinrai's spiritual pressure is too high. Even tenfold. Bakudo number 63, ethereal binding chain. Won't hold him long. In time, he'll break out. Exactly why I chose this level, Ayan replied, eyes unreadable. If I use a higher level Bakudo, he won't be able to assist us. But like this form is useful. Tosin looked puzzled but didn't press further. Ayan turned his back on Jinrai and began to walk toward the corridor of the Senzaku. Shing. A blade was suddenly at his neck. He stopped. Without turning, he glanced sideways. And saw the tip of Tosin Kanem's Zanpakuto resting against the back of his head. A split second later, another blade crossed it from the side. Aizen's sword. Together, they formed an X across Ayan's neck. Aizen. Ayan frowned and called his name. No answer. Aizen stood still, expression calm but eyes blinked out like a doll. Don't waste your breath. Even if you scream, no one will come. A cold voice echoed from the darkness. Step. Step. A shadow emerged under the moonlight. Blonde hair, crooked smile. Hirako Shinji. Ayan's pupil shrank the moment he saw the former 5th Division captain. Yo. Been a while, Ayan. No. Maybe I should say traitor Ayan Sosk. Shinji's tone was light, but his words were sharp enough to cut stone. So it was you. Ayan's voice was calm, though his surprise was real. You sound surprised. Of course. Ever since you stole my captaincy, I doubt I've crossed your mind. You saw me as nothing but a discarded dog. But I never forgot. I told you once I'd keep watching you. Shinji raised two fingers, pointed to his own eyes, then turned them toward Ayan. I told you. I'd rip that mask off your brother's face. Ayan chuckled softly. And then what? I'll hand you over to the First Division myself. Let the Central 46 judge your sins. You and your brother will kneel in chains. Shinji's smile faded, his eyes cold as steel. And how do you find this place? Ayan tilted his head. I've been watching you since before you were born. Shinji's words were low but laced with venom. Ever since Koga was arrested, I knew only two people had the motive and the means to frame him. You and your brother. You destroyed his future. You took my seat. You turned Aizen into a shadow of himself. Both of you. Filthy blood. Chapter 94, but don't forget, I'm the one in control now it seems, Ayan said calmly, that it's not so unreasonable for Captain's Imperial Guard to be inferior to each other. A Shinigami with 100 years of experience, and still so rude. He looked at Hirako Shinji, shaking his head in mock disappointment. You've been alive this long, and yet you've never learned what courtesy is. Hirako scoffed. TCH. Each generation gets worse. No wonder low-born schemers like you two could climb to the top of the Imperial Guard ranks. But don't forget, he added with a malicious grin, I'm the one in control now. You see these blades at your throat? One word from me. Just a flick of my finger. And your own brother and lieutenant will cut you down where you stand. To emphasize, Hirako raised his finger. The Zanpakuto balanced on it, swung left and right. Cling. Both Aizen and Tosen's swords pressed closer to Ayan's neck. The cold metal touched his skin. And yet, Ayan did not resist. He said nothing. Hirako, confident now, continued. I began investigating the day Koga was sentenced to blood burial. In the 2 weeks before the Zanpakuto rebellion, whispers were spreading throughout Siriite AI. Whispers. About him. Only got promoted because of the Kuachiki name. Been stuck at third seat for 50 years. Just another Kuachiki dog. Those rumors all came from one place. His division. The same place Koga spent his days since he left the Kuachiki Manor. He heard those voices every day. Mockery. Resentment. How long until it planted something darker in him? Jealousy. Hate. The desire to break free and prove himself. And when the moment came. In the First Division's meeting hall. You two were already there, waiting to make that seed bloom. You made it happen. Hirako's eyes glinted with fury. I can't undo the past. But I can change the future. I knew you two wouldn't stop at stealing the captain's seat. That wasn't your endgame. So I looked deeper. From the first day you entered the Shino Academy, I investigated everything. Where you went, what you ate, who you talked to. And then I found something strange. You were targeted for assassination just months after enrolling. In the Shino Academy. A place surrounded by a Kido barrier. Impossible to enter or leave unnoticed. Only high-ranking nobles. Or Captain's Imperial Guard. Have that kind of access. I examined the bodies of your attackers. They weren't ordinary thugs. They were trained, uniformed, and embedded. That's not something lower nobles could pull off. And everything, every piece of this trail, led back to one name. He snarled. Kuachiki. Hirako's voice grew louder, his anger spilling out after years of repression. I knew I'd find you here, waiting to finish off Koga in the Senzaku. And I was right. Ayan looked at him, then at the bound and writhing Jinrai. So that's why you've been squatting here for half a month. Living among prisoners just to spring your trap. I didn't know if I'd get anything. But I knew if I didn't come, I'd never have the chance. But now. Hirako grinned, bloodlust leaking from his voice. Not only did I catch you two snakes, I got a bonus. He looked at Jinrai with disgust. Ayan Sosk. Aizen Sosk. Tosen Kaname. You lured and framed a fellow Shinigami. You assaulted a seated captain. You performed hollowification experiments. You've broken every law in Siriite AI? That's a capital offense. Clap, clap. Ayan raised his hands slowly, clapping a few times in mock applause. Bravo. Truly a performance worthy of the 5th Division. He gave Hirako a side glance. But let's be honest. This isn't about justice. This is personal. That made Hirako's eyes narrow. Do you regret it? Ayan asked softly. That day at the 5th Division gates? I told you. If you didn't kill me then, I'd be watching. You let pride blind you. And now you're here, dancing in the aftermath. You're dangerous, Hirako growled. too dangerous to leave alive. Let me help you. I'll cut off your arms myself, and let your own brother and lieutenant finish the job. He spun his Zanpakuto and activated his Benkei, Sakashima Yokoshima Hapafuskari. Suddenly, his body trembled. Splurt. A blade burst through his chest from behind. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Just blood. He slowly looked down at the blade. Then back, his eyes widening in disbelief. That sword. The silhouette behind him was unmistakable. The one who had impaled him was his own Zanpakuto. Sakanad. Why? You? He struggled to speak as blood dripped from his lips. It can't be. Koga? No. Koga is dead. Ain stepped forward. You recognize it, don't you? Your own Zanpakuto. Turning on you. Behind him, Aizen and Tosen silently sheathed their blades and stepped back. Shinji stared at them, his voice weak. Why? Why aren't you affected? My Zanpakuto's illusion should have reversed everything. Allies as enemies. Ain. He should have been your enemy. Ain turned his back on him. Do you remember what I said at the 5th Division gates? I've never once considered you a rival. Not then. Not now. Not ever. You were never worth it. Chapter 95, Where's all your arrogance just now? Impossible. It's obviously Koga's ability. How so? Hirako Shinji shook his head repeatedly, his blood-stained face full of disbelief. His own Zanpakuto rebelled. He was stabbed in the back by the proud Sakanad. Faced with the sudden reversal and unexpected shift in the situation, he was completely confused. Just being stabbed in the back by your own Zanpakuto. Is that so hard for you to accept? Where's all your arrogance just now? Where did it all go? Ain observed Hirako Shinji's wonderful change of expression with interest. From thinking he had everything under control, giving commands with the pride of a victor, to then being stabbed in the back by Sakanad and falling into the abyss. Falling from the peak of the mountain to the deepest valley. Even someone as mentally strong as Hirako Shinji, his composure was on the verge of collapse at this moment. I asked you, how could this happen? You clearly are the wielder of Koga's Zanpakuto. You both were obviously caught in my Benkai's ability. Why weren't you affected? Hirako Shinji suddenly vanished on the spot, pulled his body off the Zanpakuto, and landed 10 meters away. Coincidentally. Or perhaps not. The place he landed was right next to Kuachiki Jinrai, still imprisoned by Bakudo. I clearly saw the Zanpakuto of you three just now in the darkness. Kafuon. The strongest elemental Zanpakuto of light and darkness. Kyoka Suigetsu. The strongest illusion type's Zanpakuto. In Mikoragi. Kido-based Zanpakuto. Illusions? No. That was clearly Koga's ability. Hirako Shinji kept yelling, eyes wide and nerves stretched taut. Being stabbed in the back by his own Zanpakuto, the physical wound wasn't what shattered him. What truly collapsed his mind was the realization. Everything happening in front of him clearly proved he had once again been dragged into the trap laid by the Sosuke brothers. After already losing his position as a captain Imperial Guard at the gate of the 5th Division, now once again, he was caught in their web. Yes. At this moment, though Hirako Shinji looked like he was losing control, his mind was racing. Filtering possibilities. Until finally reaching a conclusion he least wanted to accept. All his secret investigations into the Ayan brothers. All these days hiding in the Senzaku. His covert spying on the brothers' abilities from the shadows. All of it was likely known from the start. They hadn't just noticed it. They had allowed it on purpose. Didn't you already guess it? Captain Hirako. Oh. Sorry. I forgot. You're not a Captain Imperial Guard anymore. Now, you're just a wandering Shinigami without a squad. Ayan looked at Hirako Shinji with a half-smile, who clearly knew the truth deep down but refused to admit it. What a pity, Hirako Shinji. It's not you who's been watching us. We've been watching you. You didn't realize? I've seen every move you made these days. I was right there beside you. Watching everything. Your arguments with Muguru Makinsai, your disputes with Iterbashi Rojiro, your attempts to investigate us, and your pitiful behavior hiding in the Senzaku like a street rat. At first, I was curious. I wanted to see how far you could go. So I specifically told Yoru, who was also in the Senzaku, not to kill you so quickly. Otherwise, we might have missed out on such a brilliant little play. At that moment, Aizen, who had just sheathed his Zanpakuto, landed a final blow. A sword made of words. More vicious than the blade of Sakanad. PFFT. When Hirako Shinji heard this, he immediately coughed out a mist of scarlet blood, coloring the surrounding air with the scent of iron. He couldn't help but glance at the golden rice-dumpling-like figure of Kuachiki Jinrai tied up with Bakudo at his feet. A thought suddenly crossed his mind. He, too, had just played the fool. thinking he had the upper hand and treating the Sosuke brothers as if he were holding all the cards. Just like Kuichiki Jinrai before him. Ugly. Ridiculous. Pathetic. And yet, he hadn't even realized it. Ayan. Hirako Shinji roared like a beast. He screamed Ayan's name over and over, then, ignoring the wound in his chest, he charged with his Zanpakuto at Ayan and Aizen. Boom. Then, the moment he stepped forward with flash steps, he was sent flying back instead, sliding across the floor, falling awkwardly, tumbling over and over. You've never experienced Sukanod's reversal yourself, have you? How does it feel? Care to share your thoughts? Aizen looked down at Hirako Shinji coldly. How could he let the former 5th Division captain die so easily? From the moment at Shino Academy, when Hirako Shinji had stood before the crowd and arrogantly said that line. From the moment you were born, I've had my eye on you. Ever since that day, Aizen had decided to make Hirako Shinji's life worse than death. In fact, the script for his humiliation had been written since that very moment. Sukanod. Hirako Shinji placed both hands on the ground, trying to lift his head. But instead, bam! He slammed it against the floor. The scene was so pathetic that Ayan and the others burst into laughter. After several failed attempts, he finally adapted to the ability. Reversing front, back, left, right, up, and down. And barely managed to lift his head. Then, he looked toward the now materialized Zanpakuto, Sukanod. Or rather, the version standing just a few steps from him. What he saw froze him to the bone. His Sukanod, who had accompanied him for centuries, was now standing right in front of him. Zanpakuto raised. Blade touching his neck. No. Impossible. Even Muramasa from Koga's rebellion could only trigger conflict between Shinigami and Zanpakuto. He couldn't control the hypnosis of materialized Zanpakuto. This isn't something Koga's Muramasa could ever do. Hirako Shinji locked eyes with Sukanod. But what he saw wasn't familiar. There was no will, no emotion, no soul behind those eyes. Only a void. A walking corpse. Completely different from the semi-conscious, emotionally unstable Zanpakuto summoned by Muramasa's Benkai. This wasn't possession or hypnosis. This was control. True control. He could now ignore the will of his Zanpakuto altogether. And directly force it to submit to the enemy. To think you noticed it so quickly, Hirako Shinji. After just one glance, you already recognize the difference between Koga's Shikai and my demon sword Muramasa. Among the captains of 13 Division of Imperial Guards I've met, you're certainly above average. But still. Only above average. Aizen offered a half-hearted compliment. Compared to other captains like Muguru Akinsai, Atrabashi Rojiro, a Kawa Love. Hirako Shinji was clearly a step above. All this time, you're Zanpakuto. Kyoka Suigetsu. Wait. Isn't that your Zanpakuto? How did it become the demon sword Muramasa? As soon as Hirako Shinji heard Aizen refer to his Zanpakuto as Muramasa instead of Kyoka Suigetsu, his chest tightened. It was as if an invisible hand had clutched his heart. A suffocating sensation, like a tidal wave, rushing from his chest to flood his entire soul. Chapter 96, How could he just let Ayan destroy it? My Zanpakuto is Kyoka Suigetsu, yes. But I never said my Zanpakuto is only Kyoka Suigetsu. Aizen met Hirako Shinji's eyes, which were gradually filling with horror, and said unhurriedly. No. Impossible. Hirako Shinji's pupils suddenly contracted, and then rapidly dilated. At the same time, his body tensed and twitched in alternating spasms. If the suffocation he felt earlier had consumed his entire body, then now what replaced it was a bone-deep chill that flooded through every inch of his flesh and blood. Even the blood in his veins seemed to be affected. His body temperature plummeted. It was only now that he truly understood. The more one learns about the Sosuke brothers, the more terrifying they become. Each time he thought he had came to understand Ayan, the cruel truth would slap him in the face, telling him that his so-called understanding was nothing but the tip of the iceberg. But even that tip was enough to chill the soul. Do you know why you lost? Do you remember what you just said? You said I was conceited. But I'm not. The truly conceited one is you. Hirako Shinji. Ayan turned his back to Hirako Shinji. That day, I made it so you couldn't even use Benkai. So now, you show up again. Why did you think you'd win this time? What made you think you had a chance? What gave you the courage to come to me? Was it your Benkai? If so, then. The words hadn't even finished. And he had already raised his hand, hovering at midair. Keto forbidden technique. Golden light curse. Golden spiritual pressure, like burning flames, surged up from Ayan's body. The area it covered was not large, but its light was dazzling. Like the radiance of dawn cutting through the black of night. Illuminating every corner of the dark confession palace. Immediately after, A colossal golden hand extended from that brilliant golden light, reaching out and grabbing Hirako Shinji's materialized Zanpakuto in its palm. Then, it closed its fingers. A crushing grasp. Fierce enough to create shockwaves of spiritual pressure that swept toward the center of its grip. No. Seeing this, Hirako Shinji immediately used flash steps, rushing towards Sukanod. His Zanpakuto. Who was now trapped in that golden giant hand. Even though he had been stabbed in the back by his own Zanpakuto, he understood very well. It was only because of Aizen's manipulation. As an extension of his soul, his Zanpakuto had been with him for centuries. How could he just let Aizen destroy it? Crack. Accompanied by a chilling sound like fabric tearing. Sukanod, trapped in the golden grip, could not endure the violent pressure. Even the surrounding air was compressed into collapse. With a boom, it exploded on the spot. Then, the giant golden fingers slowly opened. In its palm, only shattered Zanpakuto fragments remained. Just like that, it was done. Only then did Hirako Shinji manage to flash in front of the golden hand. He stared blankly at the fragments of his Zanpakuto, broken and scattered like pieces of scrap metal. Sukanod. Completely crushed. Hirako Shinji's whole body went rigid. His eyes became dull and lifeless. He couldn't accept the reality unfolding in front of him. His Zanpakuto had been destroyed. Before his very eyes. After a moment, the dullness in his eyes faded, replaced by anger. And a murderous rage so strong that even the strongest flowing water-type Zanpakuto couldn't extinguish it. Aizen. With a beast's roar, Hirako Shinji turned and charged at Aizen. But before he could go far, his vision suddenly lit up. Before he could react, the same golden hand that had just crushed Sukanod stretched out from behind him. Lightning fast. It seized him, wrapping him completely in its palm. I'm going to kill you. He hadn't finished roaring out his hatred. The golden hand tightened. A powerful force surged through its grip. Crack. That same shattering sound echoed again. But this time, Hirako Shinji wasn't crushed into fragments like Sukanod. Instead, like an overripe tomato stomped flat, his entire body caved in. And then, boom. A violent explosion of blood and mist erupted into the night sky. Everything collapsed inside the golden grip. There were no signs of death. Only the brilliant red mist hanging thick in the air. A halo of crimson near the hovering hand. Suddenly, the giant golden hand clenched again, squeezing tighter. The burst of spiritual pressure it released was like a howling typhoon. It surged outward, until even the walls of the confession palace 100 meters away cracked apart. Fractures spread like spiderwebs across the stone. Only then did the waves of power gradually fade. After a while, the golden hand, still suspended in midair, slowly opened its fingers. From its palm, tiny spirit particles drifted upward, rising into the sky. Only Hirako Shinji was nowhere to be seen. Well, not entirely gone. Plop. As the spirit particles scattered across the confession palace, a severed head with wide, bloodshot eyes and a twisted expression rolled from the edge of the golden hand. It dropped to the ground with a dull thud. Just one move. Sukanod. Shattered into dozens of pieces. Gone without a trace. Just one move. The former captain of the 5th Division. Hirako Shinji. Crushed by Aizen's Kido forbidden technique. Golden light curse. Only his head remained. His limbs, torso, organs. Even his Shyakusho were all pulverized into spirit particles and scattered into the wind. It was almost identical to what had happened to Kuichiki Jinrai not long ago. His 4 limbs shattered into pure spiritual pressure. But at least Kuichiki Jinrai had hollowification and high-speed regeneration to barely survive. Hirako Shinji? He couldn't. Even if you handed him high-speed regeneration and hollowification, it would be useless. Unless he swallowed 2 Hogyoku just before death. And made the Hogyoku fully submit, unlocking perfect regeneration. Even then, it might not have been enough. That wasn't a Kido numbered under 99. Though blind, Tosen Kaname's spiritual perception told him clearly. He had memorized all Kido numbered 1 through 99. And none of them matched this forbidden spell. Golden light curse. Created your own Kido. As expected. You've reached that level. There's Bakudo for binding and defense. Hado for destruction and attack. If you're caught, it's like being sealed by a level number 90 Bakudo. If you're hit, it's like being obliterated by a Hado number 90, Black Coffin. Aizen gently pushed up the bridge of his glasses. A gleam flickered across the lens. He had seen it. That one move just now. Golden light curse. Already showed full-scale Hado and Bakudo capabilities above level number 90. Homemade Hado. Plenty in Syri I have tried. But one that fuses Bakudo and Hado. That matches or surpasses both in power. One that can imprison like a Bakudo in the 90s, and destroy like a Hado in the 90s. That had never existed. Not in all the thousands of years of Soul Society history. Chapter 97, Got it, I'll remember this brother. When did you create your own Kido? After witnessing the power of the Kido forbidden technique. Golden light curse, Aizen subconsciously asked Ayan. But as soon as the words left his mouth, he regretted a little. And what happened next was indeed worthy of that trace of regret in his heart. I created it casually. While I was playing with Kuachiki Jinrai. Ayan casually glanced at him and replied lightly. Aizen said nothing, only gave up a light, slightly bitter smile. And then turned his head away. Obviously, that was a blow from Versailles. What could he do? Aside from manipulating his enemies and subordinates, his brother also had a perfectly healthy little hobby. Pretending. Titles like Hair Wax Master and Shinigami King weren't given for nothing. They weren't blown over by the wind. On the contrary. What he couldn't stand most was someone pretending better than him. And being the one getting shown up. If it were someone else, he could still fight back. But Ayan wasn't just anyone. He was his brother. Whose Versailles abilities were on par with his Shinigami talent. That alone made Aizen's chest feel stuffy, with nowhere to vent. As expected of Lord Ayan. Others are still stuck trying to master Aikido in the 80s. But you've already casually created Aikido on the level of 90 or higher. You're also a Captain Imperial Guard. Yet compared to you, the rest are like fireflies before the moonlight. Perhaps because he couldn't see people's expressions, Tosin Kaname failed to notice the glint in Aizen's eyes as he quietly turned his gaze toward him. As if to say, got it. I'll remember this. He had no choice. Tosin Kaname's words were too sharp. Even though he never mentioned Aizen Sosuke by name, the compliments could all be applied to Aizen. And hit their mark directly. For example, when Tosin said others still stuck cultivating AADS level Kido. Well, Aizen just so happened to be one of them. Because in Aizen's standards, any Hado below 90, if abandoning chant didn't match full chant in power, it was worthless. And currently, his Hado below 90. When abandoned. Only had about 2/3 the strength of full chant. As for the other comment, that compared to Ayan, the others are like fireflies. Well, as Imperial Guard Lieutenant and de facto Captain. That included Aizen himself. In terms of Kido technique, Ayan developed abandoned chant, he improved full chant. In Kido power, Ayan could spam triple black coffin, each with 2/3 the power of full chant. Meanwhile, Aizen could only use one black coffin, and its full chant power wasn't even as strong as Ayan's abandoned chant. By comparison, what else could he be, if not a firefly? Of course, this didn't mean Aizen was narrow-minded. Normally, he'd laugh this kind of thing off. But unfortunately, he had just taken the initiative to stand next to Ayan. Only to be Versailles right in the face. But soon enough, Tosin Kaname made up for it in time. Just as Aizen recovered, Ayan looked up ahead. Toward the Imperial Guard team buildings shrouded in the night. There was no need to use spiritual pressure perception. Even with the night as cover, one could see multiple silhouettes fast approaching the Senzaku. TSK. Tosin Kaname heard the movement as well. He turned his head, and saw. Of the 10 golden chains binding Kuachiki Jinrai, one had already shattered, leaving 9. And with one chain gone, the overall sealing strength was reduced. The remaining 9 began to unravel even faster. It seems. It's time to end the show at the Senzaku. Ayan gave Kuachiki Jinrai. Who was now struggling wildly. One last look. Then, he turned his gaze away. Next stop. Kuachiki clan. Aizen raised his hand, pointing one finger toward the vast sky above Soul Society. From the fingertip, cyan light curled out like flames. Then expanded outward, enveloping Kuachiki Jinrai, who had broken free from 3 chains. The head of Hieriko Shinji, not far away. And the 3 of them. This is the Kido forbidden technique. Space transfer. Tosin Kaname's body suddenly trembled. Even though he couldn't see, his spiritual pressure perception clearly felt the technique Ayan was using, and the changes occurring around him. No. Not just that. But before he could finish his sentence, his face changed drastically. Then, his voice stopped. Not because he didn't want to speak, but because time within the scope of the cyan light had completely stopped. His movements and even his thoughts were frozen. Time stopped. Aizen muttered softly. His voice was slowed down, yet he hadn't been frozen. His spiritual pressure was powerful enough to resist even temporal halt. Swish. From the moment the cyan glow spread out, to soaring into the sky, to tearing open a rift in the black curtain above Siriite AI, to fading away. The entire process took less than 3 seconds. Once the light vanished, Siriite AI was once again submerged in darkness. In the massive Senzaku. All the prisoners in the deep cells. All the guard Shinigami blown away by Kuachiki Jinrai's Bankai. Gone. Only one trace remained. The three silhouettes of Ayan, Aizen, and Tosen Kaname. At the same time, Kuachiki Jinrai and Hirako Shinji's severed head also vanished. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As soon as the three departed using space transfer, ghostly figures surged into the confession palace from all directions. In just a blink, the battlefield was already filled with Shinigami from multiple divisions. There were seated officers, lieutenant, even captains. And not just one. Judging from the spiritual pressure traces, there were 3 intruders. Captain of the 3rd Division. Atrabashi Rojiro knelt halfway down, his fingertips pressed to the ground. His spiritual awareness scanned the palace, quickly locking on to the residual spiritual pressure. However, as he analyzed further, his expression darkened. Hirako? Muguruma Kinsai's surprised voice echoed from nearby. He too had recognized one of the signatures. It belonged to Hirako Shinji. Every Shinigami spiritual pressure was like a fingerprint or an iris dot similar, but never identical. What the hell was Hirako doing at the Senseku in the middle of the night? Was he trying to break someone out? That rascal. Love Akawa's grin stiffened slightly. It was a joke. But in the ears of the other captains and lieutenant who knew Hirako well, it was like a bombshell. Their expressions changed. Hurry. Check on Kyushin prison immediately. Kensai's expression twisted in horror. He remembered the argument he had with Hirako in the captain's meeting not long ago. Back then, Hirako's words were all about protecting Koga. No way. Kensai, don't you think Hirako tried to break Koga out? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Even if he believed Koga was innocent, he wouldn't be reckless enough to pull something like this. Love Akawa, who had just been joking, now looked ashen. Not a trace of his usual grin remained. It's not impossible. Suddenly, a heavy voice rang out. The newly promoted deputy chief of Kido Corps. Hokage Nishida. In that instant, all the captains, Imperial Guard and lieutenants present turned toward him. Chapter 98, but Central 46. In their infinite wisdom, I have sorted out all the traces of spiritual pressure that were present. There are 3 in total, and all of them are familiar spiritual pressure. They are Hirako Shinji, Captain Kuachiki of the 6th Division, and Koga, former 3rd seat of the 6th Division. Facing everyone's gaze, Hokage said something extremely shocking. Hirako again. Captain Kuachiki again. One firmly believes that Koga was wronged, and the other is Koga's father-in-law. Muguruma Kinsai had a headache. This kind of combination appearing at the same time in the Senseku. Absolutely not a good sign. Idiot Kinsai. You guessed it. There's no trace of Koga in Senseku prison. At this time, Kunamashiro, who had rushed to check, returned with the confirmation. So, the spiritual pressure traces here really do belong to Koga. This can't be wrong. When Atrabashi Rojiro heard this, his body trembled slightly, as if struck by lightning. What the hell is that guy Hirako thinking? To actually try and break into the prison? Has he lost his mind? Shiba Ishin, who arrived a little late, was also shaken by the shocking possibility. Is this really worth such a fuss? There are battle traces all over the place, and it's clearly from a battle on Captain Imperial Guard level. In other words, it's possible Hirako was trying to stop Captain Kuachiki from breaking out Koga, or Captain Kuachiki was trying to stop Hirako, or maybe Hirako tried to break out Koga and both got into a fight. Shun Sakuraku, who arrived with Shiba Ishin, assessed the situation and offered 3 hypotheses. After hearing this, all the captains and lieutenants went deep into thought. A prison break might be certain, but the 3rd possibility is unlikely. Koga was locked in the 9th deep cell. There were multiple layers of Kido, and even his Zanpakuto, Muramasa, was separately sealed. In that condition, there's no way Koga could escape by himself. More importantly, there's something else all of you are ignoring. The current chief of Kido Corps, Tsukubishi Tomioka, withdrew his fingers from the floor of the Senseku and stood up slowly. His gaze swept over Shun Sakuraku, Shiba Ishin, and the rest. Someone used Kido forbidden techniques here. 2 of them, in fact. Space transfer. And time stop. As one of the most accomplished Kido users in Soul Society, Tsukubishi Tomioka needed only a moment to detect the truth from the spiritual remnants. This level of Kido, Hirako Shinji could never use it. Which means, the most likely person to have staged the prison break. Was Captain Kuachiki. He wanted to use space transfer and time stop to remove Koga from custody. Muguruma Kinsai was the first to jump to this conclusion. But what about the battle traces? Shiba Ishin frowned. He had doubts about this direction. Prison break? I don't think so. What if this was a silencing operation instead? The new voice was soft but chilling. Everyone turned to see its source. It was the 4th Division Captain Ono Hanaretsu. She was the only one, given her position and background, who could speak of the Kuachiki family with such frankness. Captain Anohana. I didn't expect even you would show up here tonight. Do you mean to say this was an attempt to kill Koga rather than rescue him? Shun Sekiraku greeted her politely, then asked cautiously. For other captains, he might have just nodded. But for Anohana, every word she said carried enormous weight. Second only to Yamamoto Genryu's Ishigakuni. It's not a good habit to feign ignorance, Captain Kiraku. Some time ago, Hiroko Shinji came to me in the 4th Division. Judging from his attitude then, he truly believed that Koga was innocent. But consider this, what is Hiroko's connection to Koga? Nothing more than colleagues. Would someone like that risk a prison break? Or even kill for him? Anohana's voice was soft, but every word was like a blade. Captain Anohana. Can I take your words to mean that Captain Kuachiki came here not to break Koga out, but to silence him? Shiba Ishin asked with hesitation, but it sent shock through every Shinigami present. No way. Captain Kuachiki would silence someone. He's the head of the most noble family in Soul Society. But does he need to? He already declared a break with Koga during the court meeting. And Koga was sentenced to blood burial anyway. Sealed for 3,000 years. That's death in all but name. Atrabashi Rojiro and Muguruma Kinsai glanced at each other. No one dared to say it. But the truth was growing more and more obvious. What could be the reason? Shun Sekiraku lowered his straw hat, but couldn't hide the seriousness in his tone. Though his voice sounded calm, it carried tension. Captain Ian and Lieutenant Aizen. They should be at Central 46 right now. Faced with everyone's questioning gazes, Anohana Retsu suddenly shifted the topic. But what she said caused a storm to erupt. 3 days ago, they came to me. They mentioned one thing. Someone is conducting hollowification experiments. I didn't take it seriously at first. But when I checked Koga's body, I found it. A faint trace of hollow spiritual pressure. The words dropped like a thunderclap. Every Shinigami. Whether captain or lieutenant. Was stunned. So that's it. Shun Sekiraku closed his eyes and exhaled deeply. A month ago, Captain Ian was already laying the groundwork for this plan. That's why he captured Koga alive and didn't act rashly. That's why he went to Central 46 tonight. To lure the true mastermind into exposing themselves by trying to silence Koga. A brilliant trap. He couldn't help but admire it. What a pity. Had it gone according to Captain Ian's plan, they would have caught the perpetrator red-handed. But Central 46, in their infinite wisdom, ordered all captains Imperial Guard to remain in their barracks. Anohana Retsu was the only one who could dare mock Central 46 like that. And this time, not a single person dared to refute her. Chapter 99, What do Hiroko Shinji and Koga have in common? No wonder. The spiritual pressure at the scene and the traces of battle. Also, the order we just received from Central 46, forbidding all Shinigami from leaving their team buildings. Only one person has the power to do all this. Captain Kuachiki Genrai. Silencing a witness? Now that's truly unexpected. After hearing Anohana Retsu lay out the full scope of Anne's plan, the captain's Imperial Guard finally understood, and a chill ran down their spines. None of them had thought that behind the Zanpakuto rebellion. Which they believed had been resolved a month ago. Was actually an even more explosive scandal involving hollowification experiments. And not just that. This time, not only did it involve a former Captain Imperial Guard. But even a current division captain. That person being the head of one of the 4 great noble clans. No wonder it was so well hidden. Wait a second, Captain Anohana. There's still something I don't understand. What exactly was Hiroko Shinji's role in all this? Was it prison breaking? Preventing the prison break? Or something else? Shiba Ishin's words raised the same doubts that Muguruma Kinsai, Atrabashi Rojiro, and the others were all grappling with. Captain Ishin, in your opinion, what do Hiroko Shinji and the prisoner Koga have in common? Anohana Retsu's smile was gentle, but her words carried weight. Common ground? There is one. Hiroko Shinji, Koga. Both of them have had tension with Captain Ian and Lieutenant Aizen. Shiba Ishin paused, and then his eyes lit up with sudden realization. Captain Anohana, you mean Hiroko lost to Captain Ian in the captain's selection duel? So he tried to use Koga and hollowification to gain power? To defeat Captain Ian? That's what you're saying? Muguruma Kinsai asked, tense and uncertain. What role did he play in this? Was it as Ishin said to try and surpass Ian using hollowification? Or is there something deeper? The truth behind everything will become clear as soon as we locate the space transfer site. Anohana paused, then turned toward one individual. Isn't that right? Chief of Kido. All eyes turned to Tsukubishi Tomioka. Rather than speak, he simply turned his back on everyone, facing Siri-ai. his eyes locked in one direction. The Kuachiki Manor. Even in the dead of night, as the seat of the four noble houses, the Kuachiki clan residence remain brightly lit and heavily guarded. The wide wooden halls, the stream-framed gardens, the rooms scattered throughout. Each had sentries patrolling. Every 5 steps, a post. Every 10 steps, a watch. But that tranquility was about to be broken. Suddenly, in a small garden of the Kuachiki Manor, a surge of emerald light erupted. What is that? It's Kido. Alert. Enemy attack. Someone's invaded the Kuachiki estate. The sudden change threw the guards into chaos. No one had expected that anyone would dare to strike at one of the 4 great houses under cover of night. After their brief shock passed, all nearby guards unsheathed their zanpakuto and rushed toward the garden. At the same time, the sharp and urgent ring of alarm bells echoed throughout the entire Kuachiki estate, waking the noble family from their slumber. Boom. Just as dozens of shinigami surrounded the area, the blue Kido pattern faded slowly into the air. What appeared next, however, shook them all to the core. The figure standing at the center of the courtyard was both unfamiliar and terribly familiar. Even Kuachiki Sa-jun, who had rushed there after hearing the alarm, froze on the spot. Father? That's impossible. What happened to you? The man standing in the courtyard was no longer human. His body was clad in white steel-like skin, a grotesque hollow mask over his face, his limbs almost lizard-like. But in his hand still rested a zanpakuto. It was Kuachiki Jinrai. The unmistakable spiritual pressure told the story. He's really the head of the Kuachiki clan. But what happened to him? That's hollowification. That's taboo within Siriite AI. As soon as they realized what they were looking at, the crowd of Kuachiki servants began to panic. Roar. Kuachiki Jinrai, dazed for a brief moment, let out a thunderous roar that shook the heavens. His spiritual pressure exploded outward, turning into a raging storm. The guards closest to him were thrown into the air before they could even react, flung like ragdolls by the shockwave. Those further away? Not so lucky. Because after his roar, Kuachiki Jinrai slashed his blade horizontally. Boom. The sword strike alone sent dozens of guards flying, vomiting blood, crashing into walls. The entire garden was leveled. Ah. He's hollowified. He's lost all control. The rest of the household finally arrived. But they stood paralyzed. What were they to do? He was their clan head. Their patriarch. How could they lift a blade against him? Father. Kuachiki Sa-jun's face twisted. Shock, disbelief, rage. Then clarity. No matter how it had happened. This was no longer a man. It was a monster in his father's skin. If they didn't act, the Kuachiki clan would fall just like the disgraced Shiba. Everyone, listen up. Prepare Bakudo. Use number 99. His command snapped the panicked servants to attention. Although most were incapable of using such high-level Kido individually, the Kuachiki clan possessed one unique technique passed down by nobles, combined chant. With this technique, even a dozen or more shinigami could pool their strength together and perform a Kido far beyond their individual limits. With 50 servants chanting in unison, a Kido that no one could cast alone began to form. Its power rivaling even the true spell of Bakudo number 99, Prohibition and Full Prohibition. Chapter 100, Do you know how I lived these 50 years? Bakudo number 99, Prohibition. As the chants of many shinigami fell, strips of binding spiritual pressure and spiritual nails burst from the air, sealing the swinging arms of the berserk Kuachiki Jinrai, locking down a zanpakuto in his grasp. Roar. Even with his hands sealed, Kuachiki Jinrai's ferocity didn't lessen in the slightest. As he struggled wildly, he opened his mouth wide. Condensing a scarlet arrow, blasting it in all directions. Boom. The massive explosion swept across a range of hundreds of meters in an instant. Every garden, every stone statue, every column and flowing stream in its path was obliterated. Dozens of Kuachiki clan guards were caught up and blown away by the blast. Still not enough. Keep going. Second form. Kuachiki Sa-jun avoided the aftermath of the arrow. His pale face was tinged with dread. Just now, he had almost been killed by his father's arrow. Bakudo number 99, Prohibition and Full Prohibition. Luckily, the Kuachiki family had more than enough servants. Though casualties had been heavy in the last wave, new shinigami quickly stepped in, and the Bakudo number 99, Prohibition and Full Prohibition, was completed with seamless coordination. Prologue, halting rap. In an instant, massive white cloth surged out like a giant python leaping from its den, wrapping around Kuachiki Jinrai's entire body. Including his face and hollow mask, locking everything down. Refrain, serial 100 bolts. Dozens of iron rods of condensed spiritual pressure shot forward, stabbing through Kuachiki Jinrai's body and nailing him directly into the ground. Young master, should we continue? One of the Kuachiki stewards hesitated. Continue. Kuachiki Sajan took a sharp breath and shouted firmly. He understood both his father's strength and his current hollow state better than anyone. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. Finale, fully prohibited Great Seal. The gathered Shinigami exchanged glances. Given the current state of Kuachiki Jinrai, and the fact that Byakuya was still young, with Koga branded a criminal, the next clan head would almost certainly be this rebellious Sajun. No one dared to object. Boom. With a sound like the sky cracking, a giant spiritual slab etched with the Benkan seal dropped from above. Crashing down on the immobilized Kuachiki Jinrai, pinning him beneath with a thunderous impact. As Kuachiki Jinrai finally fell silent under the pressure of the seal, Sajun breathed a sigh of relief. He immediately gave orders for the seal to be reinforced and the battlefield cleaned. Father, what's going on here? And who is this guy sealed by Bakudo? His spiritual pressure feels oddly familiar. Byakuya Kuachiki had finally arrived, dragging his Zanpakuto with him. The servants nearby lowered their heads, staying silent as if they hadn't heard anything. That's your grandfather. Kuachiki Sajun sighed heavily. He didn't hide the truth from Byakuya. Something like this. Regarding the Kuachiki clan's pillar could no longer be kept under wraps. Father. Why would you rebel? The young Byakuya. Still hot-blooded and brash, so unlike the cold and composed future head of the family. Snapped immediately at what he saw. The words blurted from his mouth. I didn't rebel. Your grandfather hollowified. Kuachiki Sajun nearly cursed from anger at his son's words. Did he need to rebel? If his health had been better, Kuachiki Jinrai would have practically begged him to take the clan head's position. What? Impossible. Grandfather is a model Shinigami. He would never violate such a taboo. Byakuya's expression changed dramatically. Even as a child, as the heir of the Kuachiki family, he understood all too well what hollowification meant. Especially for someone like Jinrai. I suspect something more is at play. Kuachiki Sajun narrowed his eyes. And just then, a terrifying, beast-like roar echoed through the air. Startled, Byakuya and Sajun both turned sharply to the side. They saw the previously injured servants. The steward who had taken a Sero blast included. All start convulsing. From their eyes, nose, mouth, and ears, white spiritual pressure substance began to ooze out. Some Shinigami, upon releasing that white matter, instantly collapsed and dissipated into spirit particles. Leaving behind only their worn Shyakusho. But a few, stronger ones, managed to stay conscious. Their faces were quickly consumed by the white spiritual pressure, forming hollow masks. Just like the steward. Damn it. Someone used the Kuachiki clan as a test field for a hollowification experiment. Chills ran through Kuachiki Sajun's entire body. If he had doubts before. Now, he was certain. This was a targeted hollowification experiment against the Kuachiki family. Who? Byakuya roared, unsheathing his Zanpakuto. Me. A familiar voice echoed from the darkness. Others may not have recognized it. But how could Kuachiki Sajun and Byakuya fail to? Koga. The moment they heard it, their bodies stiffened. Their expressions twisted in shock. Sure enough. From the shadows emerged Aizen and Tosen Kaname. But to their eyes, they weren't Aizen and Tosen. They were Koga. And Hirako Shinji. Don't you love Hollow's feast, Kuachiki Sajun? Aizen smiled devilishly. Koga. Hirako Shinji. It was you. You did all this? Kuachiki Sajun's voice was cold. His eyes were like sharpened steel. He could barely believe that the convicted prisoner, locked away in the Senzaku, had somehow escaped. But with Hirako Shinji's presence now here, it all made sense. It had to be a jailbreak. And a betrayal. You made grandfather hollow? Koga. Did you forget how well grandfather treated you? Byakuya roared in rage. Treated me well? Used me to elevate the Kuachiki name into the leading noble clan, and rewarded me with a lousy third seat in the 6th division. Even your useless father got the lieutenant position. 50 years. Do you know how I lived these 50 years? Aizen mimicked Koga's voice. I guarded your estate, helped with the hollow experiments. And what did I get in return? Labeled a criminal. Sentenced to blood burial. Silenced. Luckily, I had foresight. I won over Hirako Shinji early on, or else I'd be dead by Jinrai's blade right now. Since the Kuachiki clan shows no mercy, I'll show none in return. He loves Hollow so much, right? Thinks so highly of his clan? Fine. Let him taste Hollow. Let all of the Kuachiki clan taste it. As his words fell, an ice-cold fury swept through the air. All those present. Noble blood or not. Felt the chill of murderous intent crawl over their skin. Why did you fall so far? Why stand with such filth? Did losing your captaincy strip you of your pride as a Shinigami, Hirako Shinji? Sajun shouted, his voice ringing like steel in the garden. One Koga was bad enough. But now, even a former captain of the 5th Division had joined him. All he could do now was buy time and pray that the rest of the 13th Division of Imperial Guards would arrive before it was too late. Chapter 101, No one could stop him from achieving this double kill. Fallen? No. I just want more power. I want to defeat Ain Sosuke and take back everything I lost. Tosen Kaname imitated Hirako Shinji's tone. Only you? You can never beat Ain. Never. Byakuya Kuichiki's eyes were like daggers, staring coldly at Tosen Kaname. Also, you have no future. Now, I want you to pay the price for everything you've done. Hirako Shinji. After saying that, he raised his Zanpakuto and shouted the release command and the name of Shikai. Scatter, Senbin Sakura. As soon as the words fell, the blade of Zanpakuto instantly shattered into thousands of pink blades, then swept up a storm of petals, slashing towards Hirako Shinji and Koga. Your opponent is not me. Think about how to handle your Kuichiki clan headfirst. Senbin Sakura's blade storm swept Aizen and Tosen Kaname away, but they didn't forget to raise their hands to destroy the Bakudo restraining Kuichiki Jinrai. Damn it. When Kuichiki Sajan saw this scene, his face was full of anxiety. In desperation, he even forgot about Koga's Morimasa ability and directly drew Zanpakuto. Enjoy it. The feast I've prepared for your Kuichiki family. Aizen raised the corner of his mouth and pulled out Zanpakuto with his right hand. Whisper, Morimasa. The remaining Kuichiki servants pulled out their Zanpakuto one after another, and after materializing, they immediately slashed at their own Shinigami masters. Facing backstabs from Zanpakuto, most Shinigami servants were wounded. After the wounds appeared, they quickly became like the Shinigami who hollowed before, with large amounts of white substance emerging from the 7 orifices. Even Kuichiki Sajan was no exception. Only Byakuya Kuichiki, because he had just released Senbin Sakura, luckily escaped the backstab from his own Zanpakuto. Ah! Kuichiki Sajan screamed and knelt on the ground. Wrapped in large amounts of white substance, the prototype of a hollow mask quickly appeared on his face. However, unlike other Shinigami who turned to spirits in an instant, leaving only empty Shinigami uniforms, he has always been physically weak, but he held on through hollow. Sure enough. It's because of royal blood. So there is natural resistance to hollow and higher possibility to control hollow. After taking in this whole scene, Aizen's eyes under the framed glasses flashed with a trace of realization. Byakuya Kuichiki was struggling hard under Senbin Sakura's fierce attacks, dodging left and right. At this time, he was secretly thankful. Because Shyu and Yoruichi liked to tease him since childhood, he developed flash steps by chance. Otherwise, the 3rd generation of the Kuichiki family tonight would be wiped out completely and neatly hollowed. Don't mind me. Byakuya. Run quickly, go find the 1st Division captain. No, go to the 5th Division. Byakuya. Go to the 5th Division and find Captain Ain. Kuichiki Sajan knelt on the ground, resisting the hollow erosion while yelling at Byakuya Kuichiki. At this point, he knew very well, among the 4 noble clans, there was no longer a place for Kuichiki. Yes. After tonight's battle, the Kuichiki family would not even be able to keep its status as one of the 4 nobles, let alone as the head of the nobility. At this moment, he only hoped to save his son's life and not completely destroy the Kuichiki family. No. How could Byakuya Kuichiki leave his father and grandfather behind and escape alone? The education he received never taught him to do such a thing. Boom! Suddenly, a large lizard-like foot covered with white substance stepped on Kuichiki Sajan's head and stomped him into the ground. Grandpa, no. Stop. That's father, that's your son. Seeing this, Byakuya Kuichiki's pupils shrank sharply, and his face was full of anger and helplessness. Roar. Facing his grandson's shout, Kuichiki Jinrai's deep yellow eyes fluctuated slightly, but it seemed he had been fully corroded by hollow for too long, almost losing all sanity, leaving only killing and madness. Moreover, Kuichiki Sajan had just ordered someone to imprison him with Bakudo again, which made him use all his last bit of wisdom to hold grudges. Under Byakuya Kuichiki's dull gaze, Kuichiki Jinrai stepped on Kuichiki Sajan and, with his mask-covered face, slowly opened his ferocious mouth full of sharp teeth, then light gathered, and a dense spiritual pressure sphere quickly condensed. Run. Byakuya. Go quickly, go to the 5th Division and find Captain Ain. Only he can save the Kuichiki family, no, save you. Feeling the huge spiritual pressure brewing above his head, Kuichiki Sajan did not struggle or show fear, but instead shouted at Byakuya Kuichiki one last time. Boom! With a thunderous sound, the fiery violence arrows spewed out, completely engulfing the hollowed Kuichiki Sajan, then exploded into countless spiritual pressure flames and smoke in the sky. Byakuya Kuichiki's pupils expanded, his body trembled violently, As if the sky was collapsing, and he froze in place. What a waste. This is top-quality hollow material. Aizen stood to the side, watching Kuachiki Sa-jun, an extremely valuable hollow material, get blasted to pieces by Kuachiki Jinrai in one blow. He said it was a waste, but a frightening smile appeared on his face. Tosen Kaname spread his spiritual pressure perception and absorbed the scene of the Kuachiki mansion turning into a living hell into his mind. Some Shinigami had their entire bodies turned to spirit particles and fell completely dead, leaving only uniforms. Some Shinigami hollowed and went berserk, killing and destroying everything around. In the vast Kuachiki mansion, there were fewer than 10 people still alive. 9 of them were half Shinigami, half hollow mask monsters. Only Byakuya Kuachiki remained, barely surviving under Senbin Sakura's blade. Tosen, what are you thinking about? Aizen suddenly turned his head to look at Tosen Kaname. I'm just starting to understand a little of what you said before, Master Aizen. The most terrifying thing about Master Aizen is not just his use of Kafuon. Spiritual pressure, Zanpakuto, Kido, swordsmanship, flash steps, hand-to-hand combats, and his means, fortresses, and strategies, all combined, make him terrifying. Tosen Kaname did not hide and directly revealed his heart. Tonight was too shocking for him. In the past, the Kuachiki family was so high, even above the Tsunayashiro family. In Aizen's hands, they were nearly wiped out. Kuachiki Jinrai, who single-handedly pushed the Kuachiki family to the top of nobility, was defeated instantly and became hollow experiment material. The 6th Division Lieutenant Kuachiki Sa-jun was first struck by hollow, then finished off by his own father, Kuachiki Jinrai, with Sero. The 3rd generation of the huge Kuachiki family, only Byakuya Kuachiki was left alive. All of this was inseparable from Aizen's means. Yes, this is the terrifying thing about my brother. Aizen deeply agreed after hearing it. If not, how could Aizen become the person he would spend his life chasing and emulating? Roar. Just as the two were chatting and laughing, watching the head of the nobility clan head toward extinction step by step, Kuachiki Jinrai, who had just used Sero to blast apart his son, roared furiously. Then he turned to look at Byakuya Kuachiki, the only one left without a hollow spiritual pressure, and walked step by step toward him, condensing Sero again in his mouth. Obviously, no matter what, tonight he would complete the achievement of eliminating his descendants. No one could stop him from achieving this double kill. Is it too late? Chapter 102, I thought you would die in Kuachiki Jinrai's hands, father. Feeling the spiritual pressure wave coming toward him and the overwhelming killing intent, Byakuya Kuachiki finally snapped out of the pain of losing his father. Thinking of Kuachiki Sa-jun's words before his death, he completely let go of the stubbornness in his heart after losing to Aizen, turned around to use flash steps, and flashed toward the 5th division. Clang, but before he had gone far, Senbin Sakura dodged to cut off his retreat and slashed at his neck. At the same time, Kuachiki Jinrai behind him also finished condensing Sero. He was so crazy that he could even break up his own son Kuachiki Sa-jun into spirit particles, let alone Byakuya Kuachiki and the materialized Senbin Sakura. Light blooms. A Sero with extremely high spiritual pressure density crossed the sky above the Kuachiki mansion and blasted toward Byakuya Kuachiki. This attack included both Byakuya Kuachiki and Senbin Sakura in the range of destruction. Is this the end? Senbin Sakura in the front, Kuachiki Jinrai Sero in the back. Lost everything overnight. After suffering his grandfather's hollow, his father's tragic death, and Senbin Sakura's betrayal, Byakuya Kuachiki was completely devastated. Is it too late? An unusually familiar voice suddenly rang in his ear. Byakuya Kuachiki, who had closed his eyes and waited for death, suddenly opened his eyes and saw a shining sky covering Siriate Ice Night, even splitting the despair covering his heart, with golden light flying through the air. He only saw the golden light shining from the distance, then a figure appeared beside him out of thin air. Then, under Senbin Sakura's blade threat, he slowly stretched out a finger and forcibly stopped the blade from killing him. Zanpakuto Rebellion. So, Koga escaped prison. The headmaster is still merciful. Aizen stepped into the light, stopped Senbin Sakura's blade with one finger, pressed with his fingertip, and pointed directly at the materialized Senbin Sakura, laser light. With the fingertip as the center, a circle of golden brilliance bloomed, then the laser beam shot out, covering Senbin Sakura's chest. Boom! The light flashed and turned into a huge spiritual pressure fireball, drowning Senbin Sakura's body. It is indeed the hollow experiment. With a snap of his fingers, after disposing of the materialized Senbin Sakura, Aizen turned his head and glanced at the hollowified Shinigami, Amano Murakamo. He opened 5 fingers and gently grabbed the air. Spiritual pressure photons condensed, forming a lightsaber that fell into his hand when he closed his fingers. Whoosh! The moment the Amano Murakamo was taken, Byakuya Kuachiki only felt Aizen's figure beside him blur slightly in his sight, with faint golden light blooming, then returning to its original state. But less than 1/100th of a second later, PFFT besides Kuachiki Jinrai, the other 9 hollowified Shinigami had their masks and heads cut off together. In the blink of an eye, Aon pierced Senbon Zakura with a laser beam and instantly killed 9 hollowified Shinigami with the Alma no Morakamo. After doing all this, the Scarlet Zero released by Kuachiki Jinrai belatedly arrived in front of him. One can imagine how fast Aon was. In just a moment, so many things were completed. Careful. Seeing the Zero so close, Byakuya Kuachiki reacted as if waking from a dream. When Aon heard this, he still looked calm and unhurried, pointing to his left hand without haste. Whoosh, with a sharp sound piercing the air, a laser beam burst out from the fingertip, hitting the oncoming Scarlet Zero. If you compare size alone, Kuachiki Jinrai's Zero was at least 10 times larger than Aon's laser beam. But when comparing poppy shape, is it size that matters? No. It's about who controls the position better. This law still holds true in Soul Society. Of course. In addition to positioning, strength is also crucial. And what about Kuachiki Jinrai? The position was not accurate. There was a huge disparity in strength. Boom! When the laser beam collided with the Scarlet Zero, a brilliant golden red light suddenly bloomed.